I think I'll go ahead and do that and let people join as they will. So I call this meeting to order at 6:32. Welcome everyone to December 9th board meeting. We are grateful that all of you have come to join us in the governing process. First up is agenda review and adjustment. We would like to add an agenda item number 6 under executive limitations, asset protection. It'll be an action to approve the Green Mountain Power agreement. And now we are officially into our public comment section. And tonight we have a super special recognition of 3 of our amazing high school students. And I'd like to introduce middle high co-principal Jean Berthume, who will get us started.
Thank you, Tori, and good evening, everyone. I love being asked to attend a board meeting when I have some celebration of our students. So this is always a great moment for me and a real testament of the investment we make in our community and our students. And so tonight, I know I included it in the board report, superintendent's report, but we have 3 students who have been nominated for the Presidential Scholars. And these students, yes, 3 students during COVID times who are just exemplars of our community. And all of them, I can attest, are engaged citizens. When I think about 3 words that represents them, it's persistence, it's perseverance, it's self-directed. These are words that come to mind when I think about Evelyn Monaghay, Hussein Amori, and Penny Lee. So many of you know students, and so if it's okay, I just wanted to pull some gems from their nomination forms. I think that highlight and celebrate them with just a few words. So for Evelyn, and Evelyn's nomination reflected her real work this year around the Winooski Students for Anti-Racism. We know her work well, those of us that have been administrators or school board members and various members of our community. Evelyn takes full advantage of any educational system that an educational system has to offer, but seeks opportunities that will address her passions and as a leader and activist. She is talented, compassionate, a creative thinker, and a strong communicator. She has played a critical role in our WASA work, right? She is also taking a lead with Up for Learning, and her leadership role has been an exemplary and critically important work for Up for Learning and helping them enact the mission of their organization, which is empowering youth and adults to reimagine and transform education together. I can't be more proud of this student and her contributions to changing, education as we know it. Our next student is Hussein Amori. Hussein is one of the first students I got to meet when I got hired. He gladly took on the invitation to interview me on the track. And
unmute.
Oh, there's Hussein right there. He's here. Okay, good. I was hoping that they all 3 were going to be here. So Hussein, I just want to say, is very active outside of school. He has a passion for human rights and political science, and this is evident in his involvement in local voting rights in the city of Winooski, gubernatorial campaign, having just worked on that this previous election cycle, and policy issues regarding racial justice in our school district. So just a real round of applause again for Hussein. And finally, but certainly not least, is Penny Lee. And Penny this is a double honor because she is also the Green and Gold Scholar. This is UVM's honor for Winooski. So we just should give her a special round for that.
Yay!
And she's currently a student in the Health Sciences Academy at Burlington Tech. And, you know, when given, our students there have two opportunities, two levels of rigor. One would be the more rigorous honor level and the less rigorous standard level. Well, no surprise, Penny chose the more rigorous level. So Penny chose to take the entire program of the honors level and will finish the program with 17 dual enrollment credits, which is the maximum number we offer. So I just, a real testament to these three fine students, and I couldn't be a prouder co-principal of our school and these three representatives. So I wish them the best of luck in the process. That just starts off your meeting, hopefully on a good note.
I know, right?
I
That
think-
was just like party on all the way through. This is awesome. What a great tone. Thank you, Hussein, Evelyn, and Penny. You guys are rock stars. Thank you for all that you do and what you're going to do for the world in your future. So now we are in the real public comment section where I just want to remind everyone, if you want to speak, you're going to raise your hand. And also need to remind you that this is about just hearing what you have to say and taking your questions, and then we will answer them when we return. And so if you're going to speak, you'll have probably 5 to 7 minutes to be able to share your thinking. And before we sort of kick into that, I just want to say that in the spirit of responsiveness to last week's questions, I just want to give you a few updates about the student winter transportation, which were many of the questions. The current
Tori, excuse me, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry for interrupting. Could you allow Tool to translate that for some of our Nepali speaking
yes,
guests?
please,
Thank you.
I always need that reminder. Thank you for that.
Okay, so before I start, Emily, like everybody is in, or I could see some of the people are still at the, they're not.
Yes, everyone can hear you. So
Okay.
yeah, so anyone who would like to speak can just use the raised hand feature, which is at the bottom if they're an attendee. And if they're already a panelist, you can call on the people that you know would like to speak. And just explain what Tori just shared about, you know, the limitations of public comment, and also that she's preparing some responses from last week's comments. Thank you.
आजको बैठकमा हामी अस्तिको बैठकको जति पनि हामीले प्रश्नहरू उठाएका थियौँ, त्यो प्रश्नहरू उहाँहरूले सबैजना यो बोर्डको जतिजना मेम्बर्सहरू हुनुहुन्छ उहाँहरूले यसलाई विचार गरेर यसलाई पारित गरेको छ कि छैन भन्ने चाहिँ उत्तर उहाँहरूले अहिले दिनुहुँदैछ। के हुँदाखेरि चाहिँ हामी अब अपेक्षा गर्छौँ कि उहाँहरूले हामीलाई यो जति पनि हामीले उठाएको प्रश्न छ त्यसको उत्तर दिनुहुनेछ भनेर। Okay, Tori, you can start.
Okay, so I just want to give update from the questions from last meeting. My computer's in the way. So our current WSD budget for this school year has $85,000 in it for winter transportation to and from school. And we are waiting for drivers. Because of the pandemic, there has been a shortage of bus drivers. So we have not been able to have someone give us a bid to take on the winter transportation. Also, in next year's budget, do you want to translate that first before I give you the next update?
Okay.
Please, yeah, let's let him translate that. Thank you.
उहाँ टोरीले चाहिँ जुन चाहिँ उहाँ चाहिँ अहिले बोर्डको निकै माथिल्लो पदमै हुनुहुन्छ, उहाँले चाहिँ हामीलाई अहिले के भनेर आश्वासन दिनुभयो भने यसपालि हामीले 85,000 डलर चाहिँ छुट्याएर चाहिँ नानीलाई स्कुलमा पुर्याउने अनि स्कुलदेखि पिछा फर्काएर घरमा ल्याउने दुईटै ट्रान्सपोर्टेसनको लागि चाहिँ हामीले पैसा छुटाएको थियौँ। तर हामीलाई अहिले बस छ, तर ड्राइभरको अभावले गर्दाखेरि ड्राइभर हामीले नपाएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ अहिले हामीले बस दिन सकेको छैनौँ भन्ने कुरा छ उहाँको।
Okay. The second update is that there will still be $85,000 for winter transportation in next year's school budget. And we'll be hearing from the leadership team tonight about some options and some expansion to student transportation for next year. There'll be a presentation on that during the budget section of the meeting.
हामीले अर्को सालको लागि पनि नानीलाई जाडो महिनामा घरदेखि स्कुल स्कुलदेखि घर जानको लागि 85,000 स्कुल बजेटबाट हामीले छुटाएको छौँ र हामीले त्यसलाई फेरि बढाउन सक्छौँ सक्दैनौँ भनेर चाहिँ उहाँहरूले फेरि बजेट यो पछाडि चाहिँ बजेटको प्रेजेन्टेसनहरू गर्नुहुन्छ त्यसमा के गर्ने हो भन्ने कुराकानी चाहिँ त्यसमा पनि हुन्छ अहिलेलाई चाहिँ अब त्यही 85,000 चाहिँ अर्को सालको पनि रहेको छ भनेर हामीले बुझ्न सकिन्छ
Okay. So, Tool, why don't you start with those who have their hands raised, and we'll take it question by question or comment by comment. And again, we're going to answer those next week. Okay.
ओके
Okay.
हामीकोमा फेरि पनि अहिले पनि कुनै प्रश्नहरू छन् भने हैन उहाँले अहिले जवाब दिन सक्नु भने अर्को हप्ता जवाब दिन सक्नुहुन्छ अरे प्रश्न छन् भने हामीले अझै पनि हात उठाएर अगाडि प्रश्न राख्न सकिन्छ
So, Tool, we'll do probably 5 minutes for each person to share their comments and questions. Okay.
हामीले अब अस्तिको भन्दा पनि अलिकति हामीले अझै कस्तो रूपमा चाहिँ प्रश्न सोधौँ भन्दा चाहिँ हामीले धेरै धेरै भनेको एकजनाले 5 मिनेट लिएर चाहिँ प्रश्न सोधौँ हामी दुर्गाजीले अहिले सोध्न आँटे जस्तो लाग्यो कि हात उठाउनु हुँदैछ सो दुर्गाजी तपाईले प्रश्न तपाईलाई नि तपाईको म्युट छ
ए मैले सोध्न खोजेको प्रश्न सुनिँदैछ अहिले
हजुर एकदम सुनिँदैछ
मैले सोध्न खोजेको प्रश्न चाहिँ के थियो भने नि अघि बजेट भनेर बजेट सुन्यो र बस ल्याउने लाने भन्ने कुरो पनि भयो के त्यो बस चाहिँ सीमित एरियाको लागि मात्रै छ कि एज अ होल विनुस्की निवासीलाई प्रोभाइड गर्ने हो जस्तै मैले भन्न खोजेको ओब्रायन सेन्टर र एलम स्ट्रिट इदर समवेयर उहाँहरूले कुनै ठाउँ मात्रै ल्याउने र पिकअप गर्ने र ड्रप अप गर्ने भन्ने पहिलादेखि हामीले जानेर आएको त्यो नभएर एज अ होल विनुस्की भरिकै बच्चालाई डेलिभरी गर्ने र ड्रप अप गर्ने हो कि के हो त्यो मैले बुझिनँ मैले बुझ्न खोजेको
So Tori, question from Durga. Can you provide, like, do you provide bus only to the people living in at like 87 Elm Street and O'Brien Center in that area, or do you provide bus to all the people like living in every corner in Winooski?
I'm just going to give a short. So currently, it's to Elm Street and O'Brien Center. And there'll be a presentation later addressing that. But I'm gonna try not to answer because I'm gonna try to collect the questions and then we'll answer another time. Okay. It's just really hard.
Yeah, I know like last few years we have like mainly 2 location, I think 2 or 3 location basically at the O'Brien Center and the 87 Elm Street.
Elm Street, yep.
Yes. But I know people living the other side of Winooski also, maybe they're just looking for the transportation.
Okay, thank you.
We can have like more location than just 2 or 3.
Okay.
Okay, Durgaji, उहाँले अहिले प्रश्न भनेको एन्सरमा अब पुरै एन्सर दिनु हुँदैन हैन विशेष गरी हाम्रो 2-3 वटा मात्र लोकेसन भएकोले गर्दाखेरि अब यो प्रश्न उहाँले फेरि बोर्डलाई भरे राख्नुहुन्छ र फेरि यसको जवाब अर्को पालि आउँछ जस्तो छ है
म त्यसैमा फेरि थपिहाल्छु र अनि उहाँहरूले यदि त्यसैमा जोडेको मैले त्यही प्रसङ्गै त्यही हो यदि उहाँहरूले 2-3 ठाउँ मात्रै नभएर किनकि समस्या त सबैलाई हुन्छ एलएम स्ट्रिटलाई र ओब्रायन सेन्टरलाई मात्रै समस्या हुने होइन समस्या भनेको प्रत्येक घरमा समस्या हुन्छ स्टुडेन्टलाई ल्याउने लाने र उहाँहरूले सल्भ गर्नुहुन्छ भने सबै स्ट्रिट अर्थात् यता इस्ट भयो अर्थात् वेस्ट भयो जता भए पनि विनुस्कीको मेन स्ट्रिटबाट इस्ट र वेस्ट उहाँहरूले अस्ति पनि भन्नुहुँदै थियो त्यसरी सबैतिर उहाँहरूले कलेक्सन गर्ने गरी बजेट निकाल्न चाहिँ के सक्नुहुन्न अरे उहाँहरूले त्यो पनि प्रश्न जोड्दिनु है।
हुन्छ हुन्छ Can you also add like bus service to like different corners of Winooski? Do you have budget to do that? Not only I know like it's not a problem only for like 87 Elm Street, that area, and the people living near the community center, O'Brien Community Center. I know it's a problem for all the residents. Can you provide like bus services or transportation services even to the eastern and western part of Winooski City?
Okay. All right, I got that.
Okay, दुर्गाजी हुन्छ। अब हामी अरु कसैकोमा छ भने सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ है हात उठाएर।
थ्याङ्क यू सर।
हजुर। अथवा तपाईले अनम्युट गरेर बोल्न सक्नुहुन्छ। अम्बरजी बोल्न आट्नु भयो? हजुर, अम्बरजी भन्नुस् त, तपाईको त्यसलाई अनम्युट गर्नुस् कि भन्नुस् त।
Who are you asking to unmute? I can also do it.
अम्बर प्रधान।
Okay.
Hi.
हजुर, अम्बरजी भन्नुस्।
र मैले भन्ने कुरा चाहिँ नि,
हजुर।
अब यो बस त पाइसकेको हो हैन, बस पनि उहाँहरूले दिलाइसक्नु भएको छ हैन, एउटा ड्राइभर नपाएर मात्रै बस्न यो ड्राइभर मात्रै नपाएको रहेछ भन्ने कुरो त, त्यस कारणले गर्दाखेरि यो नपाएको कारण चाहिँ यो बिमारले गर्दाखेरि ड्राइभर नमार जस्तो लाग्यो मलाई नि।
हजुर हजुर।
यो
I think he's frozen. अझै तपाईँको प्रश्न मैले प्रश्न सुन्न पाइनँ कि तपाईँले भन्नु खोज्नु भएको चाहिँ यो बस यसपालि ड्राइभर नपाएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ ड्राइभर किन छैन भन्दा चाहिँ कोरोना भाइरस भएर चाहिँ ड्राइभर छैन भन्नुभएको होला हैन? So Tori, Amber, I know he froze, and I know I was not able to figure out everything, but I'll just tell what I heard. He was telling me because of COVID, so we didn't get driver for this year. But if we get driver after a few days or after a few months, will there be transportation again?
You're on mute, Tori.
I just unmuted. Yeah, thank you. We're hoping to find drivers.
अमरजी, हामीले ड्राइभर खोज्नु र पाउनुलाई धेरै आशा गरिरहेका छौं। अब हामी अरु कसैकोमा प्रश्न छ भने सोध्न सकिन्छ। रामचन्द्रजीकोमा हो? So Emily, can you unmute school? It's written school there, but
yes. Yep. Does not appear to be. Oh, here. Oh no, it's not.
मान्छे पाउन सक्छ कि सक्दैन होला? मान्छे पाएन भन्दा अब जस्तै यो चिसोमा त जानु आउनु त बहुत असुविधा नानीहरूलाई। त्यसै अब यो कोरोनाको महामारी चलिराखेको छ। यस्तोमा त झन् अब एकदमै यसले चाहिँ नकारात्मक असरमा अझै बढ्न सक्ने सम्भावना पनि हुन सक्छ। अनि यदि पास चाहिँ भएको भन्ने कुरा बुझियो, तर अब यदि ड्राइभर पाइएन भने त अनि अर्को कुरा पनि दोहोरो बस नै हुन्छ नि होइन
ड्राइभर पायो भने तपाईँको दोहोरै हुन्छ भनेको छ
हजुर यो चाहिँ एकदमै राम्रो राम्रो खबर हो राम्रो खबर सुन्न पाइयो यसको लागि धेरै धेरै धन्यवाद तर ड्राइभर चाहिँ अब कसरी हुन्छ अब ड्राइभर पनि उपलब्ध भइदियो भने चाहिँ एकदमै धेरै ठुलो राहत हुने थियो यो चिसोमा नानीहरूलाई विशेष गरी
ड्राइभर अब हामीबाटै एक दुईजना मान्छे चाहिँ खटेर चाहिँ ड्राइभर सिक्नेवाला भयो
हजुर हजुर
हजुर हाम्रो उहाँ
त्यही त
देवको
अब सानो गाडी कुदाए जस्तो हुँदैन अब त्यसको लागि छुट्टै नै ट्रेनिङ गरेर चाहिँ सिक्नुपर्ने हुन्छ अनि अब त्यो स्कुलको गाडीको लाइसेन्स पनि छुट्टै नै चाहिन्छ
So Ramchandra, actually, I know his school is written. Ramchandra is really grateful that our budget for to and fro to school has been, it was like one way before. Now we are thinking of 2 ways going to school and coming back home. I know because of lack of drivers, there is no transportation this year. The school is not able to provide. But I know the coronavirus is still going on, and also the weather is really cold. Children walking to school, they get more sick, sometimes cough and cold, and which is very close symptom with coronavirus. So definitely many of our children will miss schools, and then also they will be missing their school work. And also there are other folks in the community. I know they have applied for a CDL license, and it takes a little longer time to get the license. I think 6 weeks. So from our community also they have applied. If possible and everything goes well, maybe after a few months we'll have driver from our community.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for your thoughts and sharing.
Okay, अब हामीमा अरु कसैले भन्नु छ भने प्रश्नहरु सोध्न सकिन्छ अघि सोधेको भन्दा पनि अहिले नसोधेकोले सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ है
हजुर अरूले पनि भन्नु छ होला नि
हजुर हाम्रो रोजी बहिनी अनि देव भाइ उहाँले पनि प्रश्न सोध्न सक्नुहुन्छ है
हैन मेरोबाट त केही पनि छैन अब तपाईहरुले जे भन्नुहुन्छ त्यसैमा हात उठाउनु त होला नि
हजुर हजुर हजुर
सर त्यही हो कुरा त हैन
हजुर
त्यही हो कुरा अब बस ड्राइभर पाइएन भन्ने कुरा त अब स्कुलको त्यो एउटा त्यो विचार अब उहाँहरुले पाउनु भएको छैन भन्ने कुरो अब त्यो क्लियरै छ हैन उहाँहरुले नपाएर त भन्नुभयो तर व्यवस्थापन ले चाहिँ अलिकति कडाई रूपमा नै खोज्नु पर्ने हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ हाम्रो विद्यार्थीहरुको अभिभावक भएको नाताले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ हैन किन भन्दाखेरि बस ड्राइभर पाइएन भन्ने मात्र एउटा विकल्प चाहिँ उहाँहरुले राख्नु उचित छ जस्तो चाहिँ लाग्दैन मलाई मेरो एउटा व्यक्तिगत हिसाबले हैन किन भन्दाखेरि अनेक कुरा पोसिबल छ यहाँनिर भने एउटा हामीले ड्राइभर पाइनौ भन्ने चाहिँ एउटा जस्ट कस्तो खालको बुझिन्छ भन्दाखेरि अलिकति चासो बजेट पास भएर पनि चासो नभएको हो कि भन्ने खालको किनभने नथिङ इज पोसिबल इम्पोसिबल हैन तर यो भाइरसको बेलामा भएर अलिकति हामीले केही कुरो त कन्सिडर गर्न सकिन्छ तर बजेट छ हातमा पैसा छ किन्न पाइदैन भने जस्तो एउटा भनाइ मात्र हुन्छ हैन ड्राइभर भनेको पाइलट इन्जिनियरहरु जस्तो हैन अब एउटा ड्राइभर पाउनको लागि खासै त्यस्तो साह्रो नै समस्या चाहिँ हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्दैन यो प्रश्न चाहिँ उहाँहरुलाई दर्शाइदिदा हुन्छ हजुर हाम्रो तर्फबाट
Okay. So it looks like Deo has a question about driver. So I think I know this is because of coronavirus. Like I know before we get drivers driving the buses, but is this because of coronavirus? Like we are not getting the driver, Tori?
I would say the shortage of drivers may have something to do with the coronavirus, but it's not because the coronavirus is keeping them from driving, but there's just a shortage of people with CDL licenses to drive the bus.
Yeah, so I mean, Dave was also asking, I know there were like plenty of drivers like before, but this time like all these drivers disappeared or what happened? Or he was just thinking maybe the school, is that a school looking for drivers?
Yeah, we've partnered with the transportation company. I can't remember the name of it to sort of help make sure, to help ask for people who want to be drivers so that they can have more drivers. This is an odd situation for a shortage of drivers. I wouldn't say we had a lot of school, drivers prior. We got 1 or 2 bids in the last, how long we've been doing this? Maybe 4 years. So we haven't had an abundance of drivers, but we had enough to be able to take a bid from a bus company to take on that work. This year, they just don't have the drivers to offer bus driving.
देव भाइ उहाँहरूले चाहिँ अब जुन चाहिँ त्यो बस कम्पनीलाई भनेको हुन्छ हैन,
हजुर
अब बस कम्पनीलाई नानीहरूको लागि भनेर पैसा उनीहरूले चाहिँ एग्रिमेन्ट गरेको हुन्छ।
हजुर
उनीहरूले चाहिँ यसपालि चाहिँ ड्राइभरको सर्टेज भइरहेछ। हामीले
हजुर
ड्राइभर कमी भएको कारणले गर्दाखेरि चाहिँ हामीले बस यो रुटमा हाल्न सकिँदैन भन्ने कुरा छ।
त्यसमै हजुर मैले पनि एप्लिकेसन चाहिँ दिएको सिडिएल को लागि, तर अहिलेसम्म मैले रिजल्ट पाएको छुइनँ। 1 हप्ताबाट बढी हुन लाग्यो।
हजुर
मैले पनि सिडिएल को लागि त्यहीनिर त्यो जुन तपाईहरुले दिनु भएको थियो नि यो वेबसाइट, त्यसैमा गएर मैले कल गरिओरी एप्लिकेसनहरु सबै बुझाइसकेको छु, तर मैले अहिलेसम्म उताबाट ब्याक कल पाएको चाहिँ छैन।
So Tori, Mr. Dev also, he applied for CDL licensing. So I know it takes around like 6-7 weeks to complete
Yeah, it does.
courses.
Yeah.
But he has not heard anything from them. He actually applied.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm glad he applied. I hope that he does hear something back. Yeah. Okay. Next person.
हाम्रो कसैबाट प्रश्न छ?
Can I say something?
धीरजले हो?
Yep.
Okay.
I had a quick thought about with all the imposed restrictions with COVID and social distancing, how is like the maximum occupancy of students in a bus? How is that going to be affected? And what are the ideas or oh, never mind. What are the ideas and regulations that the school and the school board might impose so that we can still follow social distancing and other guidelines, but still make sure that all the students get to school?
There are regulations that have already been put out for public school in terms of occupancy on buses. So the state has already dialed that in. And I don't know what it is right now, but thank you for that. Would be certainly something that will be considered as we move forward with transportation. Thanks, Suraj.
Okay, so I think we don't have any other. I think there was last time, second question was the school budget that we have for this year or next year, is that going to affect our mortgage or rent or the property taxes? I think that was also raised last time.
Okay. That will actually be answered in the presentation for the budget presentation further down into the agenda.
Okay.
So we'll be having that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to close public comments. Thank you everyone for sharing your thoughts with us. And we are going to be moving into the consent agenda.
Sure. Okay.
So public comments.
Tori, did you want Gene to do his last piece of recognition?
Yes, how quickly I forgot. So it came to our awareness that Evelyn Manger was not present during the celebration. So we're gonna do it again. Gene, hit it.
there's so many boxes that I couldn't see everyone. So I now I see them, front and center. So I see you. I see you. We're here just to celebrate. We've honored all three, of our presidential scholars this year, and I reached out to Lindsay, who I also see here from Up for Learning, and wanted to get, I know that your work this year with Up for Learning has been really key to actually actualize so much of your education and your journey in education. So I just wanted to share some of the few words that I mentioned earlier in this evening. And, we all know how influential and involved you have been with the WASA movement and working closely with us as administrators and as a school board and the broader community. But, in general, you are just an exceptional human being and that you take advantage of all educational opportunities that are before you. We are so proud of you, and I just want to pull Lindsay's quote saying that your leadership role in Up for Learning has been an exemplary and critically important to the work of the organization, and that you are really helping them actualize what this organization is all about, transforming schools, youth, and adults hand in hand. And so congratulations on your recognition and good luck on your nomination.
Whoop, whoop. Yeah.
I love the smile.
Okay. Yay, Evelyn. Thank you for all the work that you do for all of us and making this world a much better place in your path. It's gonna happen. It's happening. All right. So how about we get to the consent agenda? How about that? So I would accept a motion to accept the consent agenda.
I make the motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Alex. Does anyone have any discussion, any comments?
Got a couple
Great.
clarifications or first one is to Nicole in Sean's report under the finance and operations. The first comment under finance and operations, the favorable balance of 871. And then the next comment was my question. The 574,000 of the favorable balance due to funds that were budgeted that need to be moved to the capital project interest and principal payments next year. Understand the thought, but I thought the 574,000 was closer to 750. Is that a different number due to the financing?
So it was last month, and then as I was pulling together the FY22 budget, I circled back with our financial advisor that supported us through the first sale. And he reminded me that we have to go through this process again this spring to obtain another year-long ban, and that there will be costs associated with obtaining that financing. So it's on the high end estimate that it would be $200,000, but that we would need to use actually this spring in order to have the financing package in place for next October. So it's a more detailed, I had a better month by month understanding of where our obligations were going to arise. And so a portion of the interim financing costs will come to us this spring, with the remainder coming in October when the sale closes.
Okay, so the additional 200,000 won't be out of the FY21. It'll be into the FY22 because of the
Correct.
time.
So the total amount hasn't changed. It's just when we have to pay the bills.
Okay, all right, thank you. I thought that was a little different. The only other question I had was one question, and it's probably just wrapped in a comment. In the minutes from our last meeting, November 11th, down under executive limitations, section 7, figure out how this works. 7B2 II, discussion approve WSD winter transportation bid. The only comment in the minutes listed under that piece was I think it's supposed to be a quote from Sean. We did not get any bids for winter transportation on the first go around. We reached out to Mountain Transit and were told it was an oversight. The winter transportation budget is $89K. Second bid request came back with Mountain Transit stating they don't have any drivers. I thought the approval we gave was that we would approve the contract that was given to us that said we will, from Mountain Transit, that said we will do it if we have drivers. Was that the case?
That's what I remember.
Yes. So when I read through the minutes, the comments in there don't state that. I think that leads to my overall comment on the minutes. And they appear to have gone very, very differently over the last 2 months to a bunch of quotes, but not necessarily a summary of the topics that we discussed. They don't seem to
I see what you're saying.
tie well to the action items that were actually taken in a concise, terse manner. I just wanted to make that statement because I thought about it last time, but I never mentioned it. It just seems like the minutes need to be less toward who said what to whom and when, and more toward what was the action taken, the summary of the discussion in very direct to the point. So I don't know that I would change anything in the minutes as they stand there, but I would ask that we summarize the action items and or the discussions in a different manner. So
Point taken.
With that clarification and on the first and the comment just on the second, no changes really to the consent.
Yeah, I was gonna make the same comment, just or ask a question about whether this is the normal length of minutes, and usually I'm accustomed to briefer action focused minutes. And then just a process question for the consent agenda. My understanding is we approve this whole slate of items, but if I wasn't a board member at one of those meetings, can I vote on the slate of items but abstain from those things that I wasn't present for? Or does that mean we have to go as a board and vote on each item separately?
I would venture that with 3 of us, if you weren't there and don't want to vote because you weren't there,
yeah,
I would say the 3 of us can vote as a quorum and solve that for this time, and then next time you're in because you were here.
Okay.
I don't know, Tori, and Alex, any other thoughts?
I was just going to say that
in
sometimes if something comes up that there's a question about, we can pull something out of the consent agenda and take it out of that block and then be able to vote on it or do something with it separately.
I think Liz's only concern is that she wasn't here for some of those items, and why vote on something you weren't party to, which makes sense. So I think, and again, I think the 3 of us can handle that as a quorum.
Okay.
That'd be fine with me.
Okay. Great. Go ahead, Alex, you got something?
2 comments, and it's really a question. Really honored and really grateful that we now have like 3 presidential scholars. Out of curiosity, how many have we had in the past? I mean, this is like in my 4 years here, the first time I've heard this honored here, but I don't know if we've had in the past.
Alex, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. I know that we have had a handful, at least in my 8 years or so here. I would say 2 or 3 that I can remember, but never that I remember 3 in a single year is pretty amazing.
It is, and I think taking a deep breath, these are like symbols and data points that are talking about, the progress of our, and we should, definitely relish in the individuals that accomplished that, but also recognize that it was a community that helped raise them up there. And I saw it really is a school award. The second comment and question is more of a process issue. The weighted study coalition and resolution, do we have to vote on that, or am I good to like go meet with this coalition now with Liz, I've heard, joining me, that we're supporting this resolution? Or do we have to, is us like putting it in the consent agenda basically giving me the A-OK that we're supporting this, or do we have to put this somewhere to vote on?
Tori, you want me to respond to that?
Yes, please.
Yeah. No, it is down later in the agenda for both discussion and possible action, both on joining the coalition and adopting the resolution.
Okay,
Those
sorry.
are both further down in the agenda.
Sorry, I guess I missed that on the agenda. Thank you.
Buried. Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda? So there's a motion on the table. It is time to vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda, say aye. Oh, gotta go around. Right. Thank you. I like the symbol. Mike.
Aye. Sorry.
No, that was perfect.
Trying to be subtle.
Alex.
Aye.
Liz.
Abstain.
Abstain. Okay, excellent. And aye. So motion passes. All right. We are moving down to governance processes, board linkage with ownership. This is going to be led by two presidential scholars, this first section and discussion on anti-racism, that we are honored to have Evelyn and Hussein lead us into our discussions for Winooski's anti-racism work.
Shall we begin?
Shall we begin? Let's do it. Welcome, facilitators, leaders of the new world.
Hello. I just want to make sure I can see Hussein. My lovely, hello Hussein. But I wanted to first, we can introduce ourselves and then give you all a little bit of background about the shift that's happening in this anti-racist hour part of our board meetings. So my name's Evelyn Monhay, and I am a student at Winooski High School and also a early college student and a member of WSA and a member of your community. And I'm so truly grateful and excited and honored to be present in this meeting today. Hussein, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is Hussein Amore. I'm currently a senior at Winooski High School. I use he and him as my pronouns. And like Evelyn, I'm a member of the WSA group, as well as a proud member of the Great Winooski City.
Beautiful. I use she, her pronouns. Thank you for reminding me of that. So valuable to share those. And so I just want to give you all a little bit of background about the shift. In the last meeting, we had People's Hour. And so as we're in the midst of this evolution in our school district, both physically and in our minds and bodies, on the journey to become an anti-racist school district, yeah, hold on. Somebody just asked me a question. I was wondering, would it be possible it feels really important and valuable if we could see the folks who are in the board meeting. Is it possible for them to be panelists, or is that not a thing?
Emily, are you able to do that?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the request? I'm sorry, what did you ask?
Yeah, I was just wondering if it would be possible for everyone who's present in the meeting to be like panelists so that we could see them, even if they're muted.
Yeah, absolutely. I can move everyone over as a panelist.
Oh, that would be
That's wonderful.
Thank you, Lindsay, for that suggestion. Bum, bum, bum.
Yay.
Ah, your beautiful faces. Hello, everybody. Mom, my mother's laughing at me.
They usually do. It's all good.
Nice, and she's laughing. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, so I will pull back as folks begin to filter in. But again, just in this transition, we're trying to find a way for us all, the community and the school, to meet, to discuss and further the anti-racist movement in our school district. And we previously tried to have People's Hour. And hello, everyone. And that was so wonderful and a wonderful way to bridge communication between the greater community and the school board. But thinking about the way that was functioning, we want to explore another opportunity. And so we haven't given it a name yet, but are super excited to explore this with you. And so it will be structured as open discussions led by youth in our community. And I'll pass it back to Tori to talk a little bit about some next steps, I think.
Excellent. Thank you, Evelyn. So the next iteration of the work to create is going to be to create a multi-stakeholder steering committee that will hold the work, this dynamic moving work, to becoming an anti-racist school district. So to this point, the team is consisted of Evelyn Mange, the youth facilitator, Lindsay Howman, an adult facilitator, Sean McMahon, our superintendent, and myself as a board member. And what we are recommending to the board is that you charge us with expanding our planning team to include the following roles to ensure BIPOC representation and radical inclusion, so that the planning team that we would like to expand, we would then develop, this new planning team would be able to develop the role composition, the application, and the selection process and job description for a steering committee. And the steering committee would hold each demand-based team for approval by the school board on January 13th, potentially. So what we're looking to do is expand our planning team to be a multi-stakeholder team to help select and go through the application process and really look thoroughly for the composition of this group that will hold the anti-racism work through the demands moving forward. So board, I am looking to you to give a thumbs up that we can move forward with the planning team expanding themselves. Oh, yes, I'm getting some information that Tool would like to translate this. Tool, I apologize, you have to translate. I use a lot of words when I talk, so I apologize if it is a little too much, but let me know if this can happen, translation. Is Tool there?
No, Tori, Tool has left. A lot of the parents have asked to leave for the evening. And so Tool and I agreed that we would share the video and summarize some of the information for him to translate. So they have left the meeting.
Okay. So
Tori, are you looking for a motion to?
It's not an action item. It's
Okay.
just sort of a charge to say, yes, go ahead with this.
I fully support expanding the planning team.
Alex?
I do too. The only worry that I have about a steering committee sometimes is that, like, and I know you all won't do this, so, but just kind of be aware of this, is that sometimes when you kind of like put another steering committee, then it becomes like a secondary thing for the main board. And I'm giving you essentially full permission. Make sure you hold the full board accountable and updated to continue doing this work and be partners in this, and not have the steering committee do all this like anti-racism, work on the side. It's going to be integrated. It just makes the planning, I hope, more inclusive in the process.
Thank you for that, Alex. And Mike, you good?
Yeah, I agree. The steering committee will help focus the work across a broader group at a higher level. But again, to Alex's point, just making sure we all stay in touch and in tune to make sure we continue and we know what levers we're dealing with to move this thing forward, make sure it doesn't slow down.
Tori,
Excellent.
question. If there are more members of a planning team, are the meetings of that planning team, do those need to be like warned, and are they public, or are these working groups that can work independently amongst themselves, and then we would get reports on recommendations for action? Or
your second part to that, it's not a quorum. They will be working on their own. We will be getting feedback at the board meetings to understand the work and what's happening.
And then you mentioned an application process. Could you or Hussein or Evelyn kind of summarize like how that would work?
Well, the good news is the planning team's going to figure that out.
Okay.
And once we get that process all sorted out, then we'll start acting on it. And again, they will report back, that planning team will report back to the board so that we understand what's happening.
Sounds great.
Okay, great. So I'm going to pass it back to Hussein and Evelyn.
Nice. Hi, everybody. So the next part of our meeting today is going to be a budget presentation that was created by the WhatsApp group. And this will be a presentation given by Rainbow, who is currently a senior at Brown University. And if Rainbow is here, please let her in to just, explain the budget and, why, it is the way it is.
I'm here. Hello. Do I have
Rainbow?
Rainbow, you should be able to share your screen if you have a presentation. Yeah, you have the right to do that. Thanks.
All right. Thank you so much. I will share. All right. Pardon the millions of tabs. This is what finals looks like. So thank you all for having us. I will try to go slowly and be pretty straightforward about what this budget entails. So this budget, I guess the context behind it was formulated by a lot of scholarly work in general across the country, where essentially people of color and BIPOC in general who do a lot of social justice work, anti-racist work, and work to support communities and improving communities often are underpaid or not paid at all. And essentially, Winooski Students for Anti-Racism, as a group that is charged with doing social justice, anti-racist, the exact same work that we see across the country, we believe that we should get paid as well for the amount of work that we do, because it is serious, authentic, and like work that you would pay consulting groups a lot of money to do. And so we are here presenting a fair budget that pays not only students and alumni of Winooski Students for Anti-Racism, but for non-WSA members such as community members, parents, and other folks who want to do the demand work. And so the budget is organized in overall and then demands 1 through 8. And I'll just essentially go through each row and be pretty quick and simple. If there are any questions, please let me know, and I will answer them as soon as you send them in. Sounds good?
And we can, people have a hand raise so that, or do you want to do it in the chat?
I prefer the chat since I can't see people raising their hands when I share my screen. Thank you.
Yeah.
There is no chat.
There's no chat. Okay, Q&A I can see though.
Yeah, so the Q&A, I don't believe that panelists, and everyone at this point is a panelist, is able to write anything in the chat. panelists can only answer chat Q&A.
Okay. In that case, if someone raises their hand, could Hussein or Evelyn please just interrupt me and let me know?
We got you. I got you.
And Rainbow, this is Lindsay. I don't know if you can see me, but I was just going to say, you all have, you know, the discussion pieces afterwards, so perhaps it would allow you to really tell the whole story, unless Hussein and Evelyn, you see a question that needs to be tended to. It's entirely up to you all.
Rainbow, how does that feel to you? Or maybe we could have folks like write down their questions.
Yeah, if it's mostly questions concerning actually clarifying, like, what does it mean to be a non-student alum member, and I forget to explain that, just like those clarifying questions, but then other questions save for later, is what I meant. My apologies. Okay, cool. So we'll get started. So this is the overall budget plan. Overall, what that entails is essentially when we do all group meetings, and then also accounting for any general information and resources we need to access, such as liaisons for our general work, and community outreach or social media. And then we also have additional costs that might be related to other demands that I just threw in here. And they also are, I think, total combination of numbers you see later on. So for example, actually that's not a good example. Wausau weekly meetings, essentially we meet about every single week now, and we're expecting about 10 to 15 members on average, set that maximum to 15 members. And we are going to set a rate pay of $12 or the minimum wage as the state of Vermont sets. And we want to make it very clear that we set it to minimum wage and not $15 or higher, because we want to make it clear that some staff members of the Winooski School District are getting paid as low as minimum wage in the school for doing very incredible work, such as the lunch staff, such as instructional assistants. And so we want to honor them by not being paid more than them, and more so as equals, until ideally there is justice for a more livable wage for them. Okay, cool. So weekly meetings, I set that to the rate times the number of members expected to attend these meetings, and then about 42 weeks of the year, covering for any breaks and just like resting days for people and holiday time. And then primary email person, just a communication person to manage all of our emails, because we get a lot. Primary liaisons are communication people. Outside of emails, it's whenever people want to have meetings with us, these are the core people. And so we set 2 people for this one. Next one, core team members. This is the bulk amount of payment going to the students and alum members of every single demand of all the expected work to do. And I'll go in more depth about this per demand. This is for non-student and alum members. So this is parents, community members, teachers, staff, faculty who also work with us. Community outreach, self-explanatory. Parent outreach, self-explanatory. Professionals or hired members, if we ever need to hire professionals in a certain field to train us or train a certain group, that's what that number goes to. And translators, liaisons, to pay either student translators and liaisons or professional translators and liaisons. And this number is also based off of the other demands. Additional costs, digital outreach for the entire project. Whatever goes in the bucket of digital outreach goes there, whether that be through social media or through just lots of advertising that might be necessary. Digital accessibility and publishing material, if we want to print out any materials, especially for a later demand on educational civil rights. Recruiting funds for demand number 3, and recruiting funds for demand number 4. We'll get into that. Gift cards, we'll get into that. Community bonding, just a small number for any community activities we want to do in a non-COVID world. Self-care work, if we want to bring in people to train us on self-care or just like treat ourselves. Informal community conversations. Sometimes we have conversations outside of just Zoom meetings or in-person formal structured meetings. And so that's just a bucket of money in case that happens. And then trainings and retreats that will happen twice a year to, of course, make sure that not only are we training the people to do training and people in the school district to be well-versed in anti-racism, but also maintaining that we ourselves are constantly updated on anti-racist practices and keeping ourselves accountable. And so the total for the entire thing, so all these spreadsheets, it comes to $70,560. Any questions, clarification questions so far?
If I understood this correctly, Rainbow, everything below here breaks this total down between the 8 demands. Is that correct?
Yes.
Is there a fiscal agent for like processing payment to the people involved?
That's a great question. It's either the school, if they decide to be our fiscal agent, or we will look for one with a nonprofit fiscal sponsor.
Do you know whether there are other models of schools doing this, or is this kind of a new model being recommended and considered?
I'm not a budget expert, but for any, I guess it matches more so if nonprofits partner with the school to work on things and they present a budget. Is that probably the most accurate, similar model? Nicole, Sean?
I thought we had had a discussion previously. It said that the funds here would be put aside with a nonprofit to work through them due to the workload of keeping the records through time. I'd have to have Sean confirm that.
If it's okay for me just to interrupt, because I don't want to, I want to make sure that Rainbow and Hussein and Evelyn continue with their piece, because they did put aside some time for the board question and comments, but they really wanted to open it up to community discussion after Rainbow was done. So I just wanted to put that out there. Rainbow, did you want to continue? Did you want to take some more questions?
I mean, those are important questions. So
they are. I think, and I don't know if Evelyn's still on, because I know she might be somewhere else right now, but Hussein, I think the questions that were posed to follow your budget explanation were really to look at it in a different way and then get into some of the nitty gritty with the board afterwards. But I will leave it to you all to decide.
I'll pop in here and say that I think doing an overview so that we can have a deeper discussion next week during the next iteration of our budget meeting. So I think, but knowing now that the fiscal agent is a question that needs to be on the table. So I think those kinds of things like, yeah, we need to address this the following week when we get down into the nitty gritty of it. That's going to be helpful. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Rainbow, is that good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Hussein?
Yeah.
Okay. But do keep that question for next time. I just want to make sure that you are heard. Cool. So that's the overall thing. And now going deeper into each individual demand. Essentially, our goal is to have an action group for each individual demand that has a group of representation 50-50 of students, alum, and then community members that are part of this group doing this work. And that's essentially the format for every single demand, unless there's specifications that require not necessary. So demand number 1 is the Racial Truth and Reconciliation Commission work. This has a representation about 3 WSA student alum representatives. And if you see 3, it's typically a middle school representative, a high school representative, and an alum representative. That's roughly what we're shooting for. And then 4 of the non-student alum members. And then similar 12 flat rate, I'm just gonna have that flat for across the board, and then 120 hours calculating about for the year. And we approximate it about weekly the amount of work we want to do. But this is just an average based off of what happens if you do 1 to 2 hours a week, and that's how we came up with 120. Community outreach is a huge part of this commission, and so I think we should compensate people for their time of speaking to the Racial Truth and Reconciliation for testimonies and stuff with $20 gift cards. And I'm approximating about 60 people are needed for this research. And parent outreach is included in that. Professional hired members. We want to hire a professional for about 2 to 3 days to teach this group on how to do racial truth and reconciliation research. That's straightforward. And then translators, liaisons, because we anticipate that if we want testimonies from the community on a genuine level, that we will need translators and liaisons. Yep, that's for that. Demand number 2 is the Permanent Anti-Racist Committee annual cost, once again, representative of 3 reps from WSA and 4 reps from the community, and then hired professionals to do annual training on anti-racism, or biannual, however they want to split it, for the $4,000 a year. That's demand number 2. Demand number 3, the SRO demand and trauma specialist demand. We have a representation of 4 WSA members and 4 community members. Compensation for community and parent outreach, because this will, of course, we want to have that input and we want to compensate them. And then translators and liaisons. For translators and liaisons, if you see the flat rate of 12, that's because we want student liaisons who might know the slang and more informal language of translating in a way that the professional liaisons sometimes might miss. And so that's something that we come up with and allows the students to train themselves to do that work. Since we have such a diverse student population that with tons of languages in this school. And then potential funds for recruitment of the trauma specialist, any money that might be needed to, say, flying people in, advertising on different forums for these trauma specialists. That's the main.
Hey, Rainbow, really quick. Yes. Just to be mindful of time, I was wondering if we could, in the kindest way possible, speed it up a little bit. I am loving the way that you're talking about.
The rest are really quick. Number 1, 2, 3 are our biggest ones. I swear I'll be fast.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Number 4, recruitment of teachers, 5 reps from WSA, 3 reps from the community, and then funding for recruitment and outreach. Demand number 5, I'm getting faster, ethnic studies curriculum, 4 WSA reps, 3 community members, community and parent outreach for input on ethnic studies curriculum, and then hired professional in ethnic studies to train staff and faculty on what ethnic studies means in the school. Demand number 6, equity audit of curriculum. This is basically a research team / team that goes through what exists. 4 WSA reps, 3 community members, compensation for community and professionals on how to do that. Demand number 7, civil rights professional. This one is like probably the quickest demand we can finish, because all it takes is research to find civil rights professionals to give the biannual workshops, and then liaisons to translate these workshops, with potential money to go to brochures and papers and documents. And then EL mentorship program. We're thinking about 30 mentors, student mentors that we want to compensate with gift cards, and then for the community members on a volunteer basis, and then professional hired members for anti-racist and trauma training for all mentors, and then gift cards so that all mentors have funding to do things that might cost money with their mentees. And that's it. Fast, boom, like I said.
Beautiful. Thank you. I just want to be sure that we have time to connect with the community. Thank you for walking us through that. That felt incredible.
Yes.
I had to pop away for a moment because I wanted to touch base with the Giving Project, which is a nonprofit organization that has been chatting with WSA recently, and we have been gifted $725 from their giving circle. So honored and excited about that. And as we just got that final number, we also got granted $3,000 from the Vermont Community Foundation. Lindsay Hallman and I partnered to submit a grant application for the Spark grant. So that's just sort of like the beginning of where the money is coming in, as Rainbow has walked us through. Because this is such an essential, essential work that is hosted and guided by the community. It feels really important that we honor that work, and all members moving forward are paid. And so we've had some folks in the greater Vermont community who really believe in this work and have put money into it, and time and communication and love and kindness. And so that is what we're proposing to you all, is to really put the time and money and effort and love and kindness and empathy from the community back into our school district, and really foster that connection. So again, Rainbow, beautiful. Thank you. So important. And I think next we're gonna walk into or transition into the community's questions. And so Hussein and I will ask a few questions, and if folks want to answer or have some prompts or thoughts from that, please feel free. Hussein, do you want to add anything before we get into the actual questions themselves?
Not really. Just ready to go.
Beautiful, love that. So the first question for folks, and please feel free to raise your hand and we can call on you, is what excites you about this budget? So is there any piece that makes you feel excited, or you want to learn more about, or feels really essential to you?
I'll start. I think what excites me is the thoughtfulness that went into each line item of how to take each demand group and honor the work, honor the folks in it, and allow for it to happen in an incredibly thorough way. I just appreciated how you laid all that out, Rainbow. Thank you.
Mr. Vignanan.
I'm just really excited to see all this work starting to take shape. So the piece that Tori introduced before this, along with a proposed budget, it just feels really exciting after all of the tumultuous stuff that happened in August and September, that we are really starting to come together and are getting close to really getting into the work and pushing forward on this really, really important work.
Alex?
No, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness, and I think you're right. If we're serious about the work, this is, like, I'm going to say it's an investment. It's not a cost. It's a truly investment in having the money to show that we're really investing as a true commitment to the work that moving forward. So I appreciate y'all doing that tangible work, and now we just got to figure out how to move it forward.
Liz.
Hey, thanks. I'm super excited to see people getting compensated for the incredible work, and have in other kind of areas of my work been trying to figure out like how to do that thing, and like trying to figure out the logistics. So happy to like just be working on, like, everybody kind of throws their hands up and is like, well, you know, they're not employed by the organization, so we can't pay them, to saying that's what is right and just, and so we're going to figure out how to pay people for showing up and doing this work. So still have a lot of questions, and we can save that for next week or offline. I'm happy to dig in on details with folks, but it is how it should be.
Go ahead.
Mr. Geyer.
Yeah, I think it's just amazing that you really feels like you folks have really established an organization that's going to be long lasting and sustainable, that can really carry this work all the way through. And I'm just really excited to see all this amazing work you've all done.
Mike?
So I'll mirror the previous comments about seeing the work moving forward, having pieces and parts come together, a little more structure to the whole piece. I as well have a lot of questions that I need to work through before I get enough clarity to continue to move forward. I think most of them are structural questions. So based on the previous comments, when you guys think those questions are ready to be answered or asked and answered, let me know, and look forward to keeping this moving forward.
Wonderful. Do any community members have any questions they'd like to ask, or not questions, comments or pieces that excite them?
I'm really excited that you guys carved out space for like just to be experts on your own community. You know, like I really like that you're giving opportunities for maybe younger people in your community or other people you might not consider as like, you know, in the education sphere to get involved. I think that's really cool.
Anybody? So our next question, and actually before I go to that question, I just want to say thank you, Rimbo, for your presentation, and thank you for putting it together, because it was a lot of work, and appreciate it. So our next question is, where are there opportunities for this budget to look different of growth? Like, so in other words, where are the growth area for this budget? What do you see we can improve on? Ms. McNannon?
So I think starting to think about how the budget that you are proposing ties in with the document that Tori presented. So when you think about a steering committee and those demand-based teams, how does all that work together? And you probably don't have enough information quite yet to do that thoroughly, given that the composition and the roles and so forth have not been completely described yet. But I think it would be good to thinking about how do we kind of marry those pieces, the structure and the budget, to make sure that we have all the investments covered. And then the second thing to consider is, my experience with this is that translation is going to be a higher need than what you have described in the budget, and will require a larger investment to do this thoughtfully with all members of our community.
Nicole?
So I just want to echo everybody's comments earlier about how it's a very impressive piece of work and very clear. I think the only thing I would suggest, and it sort of builds off of Sean's comment, that whether it wouldn't necessarily be in this budget, but we have a discussion about the different resources available to support some of these pieces. So we do have access to federal grants that we could leverage to pay for consultants and that sort. So to Sean's point, if we need more money for translation or community-based work, perhaps we could free up some space in the budget by tapping some of the federal funds that we have available to us. So just sort of really thinking strategically about how do you blend the different funding sources to achieve the objectives.
Go ahead, Alex.
So one of the comments on this, I'm thinking about the budget, is from a researcher called Daryl Green, who says, like, you know, we need to treat diversity as we treat technology. We wouldn't say technology is a nice thing and not put a budget together to do technology, right? Because it is ingrained, and that's how I see the work that you're all doing with this budget. That we need to make sure that it's always in the budget. And so the question to answer your question now and how that relates is thinking about the sustainability of this budget and how do we move forward. This can't just be a one-time thing in our thing, but thinking about how do we keep this going so that it always becomes a forefront, right? Like, I'm going to tell you, it may not seem like much, but I'm going to tell you that diversity has changed a lot since I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and I see it continually changing. And I think this constant investment in the budget is good. And then the second thing that just to think about some of the, maybe, and this might be more led to the third question or this, thinking about the budget, but when you're thinking about like professional trainers and all that, think about looking at people who do a train the trainer model, where it's people who train us so that we can train each other too and kind of grow that kind of natural within the community. So, because I'm going to tell you too, like, diversity is also one of those things that, like, a lot of us don't get it after one lecture. It's a constant thing. It's a constant interaction. And that's what I really appreciate about this budget, about like the constantness of working week to week, and you're budgeting that and doing those kind of interactions and reaching out to the community, because that's what diversity is really about. It's the interaction that comes out, that forms creativity. And so just think about those things and definitely work with us so that we can like really ingrain it, and then it becomes truly ingrained in our culture.
Mike?
So one of the first thoughts I had with regards to the budget, I think it needs to be broken down. Some of these items are going to be one and done. Some of these items are going to happen a year or two. Some of them may end up being in the budget for a long period of time. We have to handle those financially. We have to handle those differently. If it's a one-time item, it's different than if you're adding a position in the staff, say, where it needs to be there permanently. So we really need to know in this budget, which of those items are 1 year, which of them carry, and what is the difference between them. So I think we're going to have to know that in order, because whether we actually if you ever put anything in a budget, those dollars never come out. They may not necessarily be spent for what you put them in for, but they don't come out. So I'm hard pressed to put one-time items into a budget long-term. So I'm really needing to know the difference between those two pieces as you go down through the line items. I have, again, 100 other questions, but that is my probably overriding challenge.
Liz?
Yeah, that's awesome to hear you've already had some success in fundraising around this work. And I'm curious whether Emily Hecker and the school have been involved in the like seeking funds for this work, or whether that could be elevated.
So Hossein, if it's okay, I can respond to that.
Yeah, definitely, please.
Yeah, so we have not, I think just because we haven't gotten to this point yet. So we are happy to help with that. As you know, we have a pretty big development goal in front of us, given our capital project, and that's where all of our energies have been devoted thus far. Obviously, Emily, in her role and being one person, the development side of her job during the pandemic has been given a lot less capacity with the overwhelming amount of communication that has been required since March in order to keep our community and staff up to speed with what's going on. So we're really looking forward to getting safe and healthy so that we can get focused on both of those aspects again. And development will start to grow again. Right now, it is a bit stuck in terms of a lot of those dollars are being pointed towards COVID-related items and not other things.
And if I could just jump in too, the money that has been secured thus far from the Vermont Community Foundation and the Giving Project was really done by the WASA members. Evelyn and I worked together in partnership on the Vermont Community Foundation grant proposal. But this is really in talking about this part of the funding, this is just to begin to compensate them for the work that they've done up to this point. It's a small amount, 3,750. Did I get that right? 3,725, somewhere around there. It's a small
25.
amount. Yeah, thank you. In the bigger budget. So really, what I just wanted to amplify is this is work that they've done on their own to find funding sources.
The Giving Project connected to the downtown Winooski to me, and then I connected them to the students. So I do think the connections to the district definitely facilitated that process. And then Evelyn and Steffi Siki were really the ones who did all the work to develop that relationship and kind of naturally compel the Giving Project to focus their giving on the students.
Thank you for clarifying, Emily. I did not know the connection. Thank you.
I think also, Liz, to your point, if I may, just sort of jump in and talking about finances. A lot of grants would want a 501c3 status and some kind of independent financial body, right, to make a lot of donations. So that would be a really important piece of the conversation. I know it came up earlier, but I have access to a lot of education-related grants that I think could be really interesting to pursue that I'd be like delighted to talk about and share with the students, but a lot require a 501c3 status in order to do that.
Can I just say something real quick? You're saying, Evelyn?
Please go ahead, Devin, but you don't have to ask us. Just go.
We've been having a debate between becoming a nonprofit ourselves or looking for a fiscal sponsor since July, because we're all working students or fully employed for other things. And being a part of a 501c3 requires us to be employed under that. And I'm still a senior in college, so I can't do that. So that's the primary reason why we haven't already applied to become a 501c3. Otherwise, we would have done it a long time ago. So we're kind of still debating between the two right now.
And also, thank you, Emily, for you're for telling us you have some connection to this. It means a lot. But like Rainbow said, I think we've talked about this before. And I'm a senior in high school. I'm going to college next year, so I'm still sort of finding my way into society. Not ready yet for that, but yeah.
I'd be happy to help work with whomever's trying to figure out those details on like a fiscal sponsor or how to move forward with that.
Everyone, do you want to move on from this?
Yeah, sorry. My Wi-Fi just turned off and I disappeared. Will you recap what you just said for like a minute, just for a second?
So Rimbo and I were just talking about like how like, we have, sort of, made ourselves an organization here, and that was sort of, the conversation that was going on between Emily, Lindsay, and Ms. McDaniel, and correct me if I'm wrong. And I was just sort of, Limbo was sharing how like, we as the WASA group have not made the decision to, to make ourselves nonprofit organization, mainly because like, we have to sort of, be employed if we make that decision, and a lot of us, are still young. Rimbo is a senior in college, and, the two of us, you and I are sort of, going to college next year. So we're still figuring things out, and like, we really cannot sort of, commit to that level. But
Yeah, for sure. I can just talk really quickly and then would love to move on to be mindful of people's time. That's definitely an ongoing discussion we've been having, while also like trying to support WSAW, support the changes that are happening as the school district, or as the school year has started and continued. And also at this point in time, Up for Learning and Lindsay Hallman are our fiscal sponsor in terms of when writing the grant, we needed one, and being in contact with the Giving Project. So the money that we've received thus far has been in partnership with Up, and so they're our fiscal sponsor at this point in time. But moving forward, we're thinking about what it would look like to be our own organization. So I think that's just a little bit of information. But yeah, I feel comfortable moving to the next question, just to be mindful of folks' time. And so our last question is, what are your creative ideas to find funding for this work? So to expand on that, and we've talked a little bit about this is like grants and things like that. What are some other options, grants included, that come to mind when thinking about where to get money for funding this work?
it's like, if people feel comfortable, let's go ahead.
No, and I think the silence is because it's really hard, because it's really like fundraising, maybe fundraising. I mean, I could slightly say I'm going to try to play the lottery and hope I win that one too, and I donate all. But I've been playing $40 and only won $4, so that strategy hasn't really worked well. But all jokingly aside here, I mean, I think the other creative way that we might think about is just maybe partnerships with certain organizations that want to join in. I'm thinking more on the professional training, like either potentially any like higher ed organization, because what you're doing is actually innovative and really cool, right? Like if you read a lot of the higher ed stuff about like, what we're, investing in diversity, right? Like think about that, like in putting it in the budget that's actually going to go through ingrained with the community and all that. Like there has to be potential research projects that want to like mimic, and how do we do this overall? I don't know what that is totally, but like, so if it's not fundraising, but it's potential partnerships that can kind of take on some of the load, that might shed some of the funding. But but that's about it that I have in my head.
I think, Alex, that's one of the things that came to my mind is we have the university right here with doctoral students doing or potentially looking for some of this work. It seems like that would be a perfect fit for somebody to exercise. They would have the time, energy, incentive. It seems like it'd be an avenue to pursue.
And sorry, the other thing that's popping up, because I'm thinking about the company that you work for, is that I know in the growing world that corporations keep on talking about, like, they want to diversify their workforce and they want people who can handle these things. And it might be something that we look into, also corporate foundations that partner up, that, you know, that kind of want to join in on this and are willing to also partner up to do this work, because it serves as a pipeline for recruitment. You know, like, once again, it's a hard idea, and like, I think we got to play around with it, but like, you know, I can see us being interested in working with Global Foundry and saying, hey, do you want to partner up with this, and kind of, and also work with your people who are also wanting diversity training, potentially, and building an anti-racist workplace. And what's nice about that kind of model, if you think about in the long term, one of the biggest things that I worry about, and I've seen this happen with the students that I work with, are people who like think they leave at a college that are anti-racist and then have to deal with a racist kind of workplace. And so how do we create, right, a more pipeline so that it isn't a bubble just in the school, right? And they have to face that burden too when they go in the workforce. And is that an angle that we can kind of sell this work? And not sell this work, but promote it, and like be said, like, be leaders in this, you know, of connecting school, community, workplace. Just ideas.
And I'd be more than happy to try to find an avenue for you guys to talk into somebody in either the HR group at Global Foundries, if you want to try that path. I can't, you know, think through what that would lead to right at this point, but it's a conversation. It's the conversations that you don't expect leading somewhere that end up going somewhere that's surprising.
This isn't exactly a specific recommendation, but just kind of an observation and an interesting perspective. This year, the district had benefits from $100,000 grant, private grant that was made through an anonymous benefactor to Spectrum. And that's how we're doing this restorative justice work. And so I think that this is definitely something that would resonate very deeply with a lot of donors and investors and philanthropists within the state of Vermont and even perhaps beyond. So looking at some kind of potential partnership of that nature and looking at funding the work through something along those lines. So it's a creative partnership between several organizations, including Up for Learning, and primarily through Spectrum. And that's how we have the amazing services of Kayla Loving. And that amazing restorative justice work that's happening within the district. So that's just one example of, very real ways of paying for the work that needs to be done.
And that donation came out of some positive communication about something that was going on within the district, or within that somebody said, hey, I would love to jump on that. So it's that positive communication that gets out and communicated, and the positive force people want to get behind.
Yeah,
and again,
exactly.
You never know where something good is going to come from.
Sorry, you got me on this creative run now, getting my second win at 8 p.m. and stuff. I'm gonna admit, Wasai, you guys have like great writing skills and communication, and like you have much like ways of communicating. I'm telling you, social tweets to like Ellen, y'all can get on Ellen and like do stuff like that, or Kim Kardashian or the Kardashians, just getting us on that public kind of like notice. Like you all like, and I know that I've read some of your work, like, and I think if you promote your voice and say what you're all doing and sell it, that's sell. I apologize. I shouldn't be using the word sell. Promoting the work and the deep work that you're all doing to make us, and I've said this too, right? What you're all doing is, what we're doing here is supposed to be a case study, not just for Vermont, but we're the light for Vermont to show what it means to be, and I said this, right? Changing the definition of Vermonters, not to be how long we've lived here or how many generations here, but define it by the the true passion that we have for equity, justice, and all that. And I feel like you are embodying this and making us better as a community. It's just, how do we get social media and like Ryan Reynolds or who's the Austin Kutcher, like getting them aware, wanting to come here, to like LeBron James, you know, like, because I think they want to see this. They want to, I mean, this is a community, we're like the little engine that could, and it's a story that can be big. And you guys are great writers. I wish I had those connections, but like, I feel like you all will make the compelling story. And I bet one day I'll see you on Ellen not selling, but promoting and talking about the great work that you're doing. And if you don't like Ellen, you can, you know, Oprah, if she, you know, we'll find a way to get Oprah to help us out or something. So sorry, 8:11 p.m. Creative Juice is now coming out. Like, I'll be quiet now.
That was fun, Alex. I love all those comments. So, Evelyn, are we moving through the questions? Would you like to sort of sign us off, or?
Perfect. That was just where I was headed.
And that was a good note to end on, Alex. Big thank you.
Yes. So beautiful. Love and appreciate all of y'all's passion for WISA's work. Can't wait to be on TV and we'll remember you guys when we're big and famous.
Right.
But I think that's all. We just want to extend this invitation to the greater community and continue to have further dialogue and communication in a similar fashion on other topics that allow folks in the community to connect with you all. Hussein, do you have anything before we sign off?
Not really, but just to get back to Alex, I think I want to see Oprah. You know, Oprah will be the better choice for me. But yeah, I don't really have anything, but, you know, just want to say thank you for everybody for participating, and you know, thank you for the questions, thank you for the comments, and yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Passing
Thank you.
it over to you.
mean,
Sorry.
we couldn't have asked for better leadership in anti-racism with Rainbow and Hussein and Evelyn leading this charge, and all the work that you're doing to also make WASA sustainable by bringing in young members and really cultivating community and connection there also. Y'all are shining stars, and it's wonderful to be a part of this with you. Yay. All right, so we're going to move on to Heart of Winooski. Speaking of foundation and an organization, so the Heart of Winooski is looking for a board member representative appointment, and I'm wondering if we have the space to think about a nomination now, or if we'd like to just have a discussion about what that would. What sort of time and commitment that would be for a board member to be a rep on Heart of Winooski. Matt McNeil was our prior representative. So I don't know if, Emily, if you could speak to the time needed, and maybe if board members, Alex and Liz and I, Mike, have questions about what that would take.
Before we go on that, I forgot to mention this in the consent agenda. First, I know all the hard work that Emily has done with the communications, but I just want to acknowledge and congratulate for getting this all going up. And we kind of blew by the fact that we just got an $100,000 like donation, right? Like that's not a change there. And so we just properly acknowledge all that hard work and thank you for and the investment that we put in this. Before we go in and the details, but thank you for all that and actually pushing and the touching words of this person seeing the investment and worthwhile in our community. And I know that was not something that just popped in that had to took some real dedication. So thank you, Emily, for all that work that you did. And now you can talk about Emily, just acknowledge that.
Yeah, and thank you for pausing to acknowledge and to celebrate. It is huge that we're at this place to talk about adding a board member to a fabulous foundation that is dedicated to supporting Winooski and students and families.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And I think it has a lot of really important opportunities for the district. So in terms of time commitment, I'm sorry, I was not expecting to share, so I hadn't not. This is
Right,
kind of
yeah, and
spontaneous.
I think just quickly, just to give us an idea, because Matt McNeil
Sure.
was on that, so I have no,
Right. Yeah.
ability to think that through. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a 12-member board. Evelyn is is one of the student representatives as well, which is fantastic. We have, I could go through the 12 members, but essentially it's like a quarterly meetings. It's been a little bit more than that at this point, just to get us to the point of approving the 12 member appointments and approving the donation. And then choosing an investment bank to handle that investment or that donation. So there have been 3 meetings up to this point, kind of the interim board in order to appoint the full board. So our first full board meeting is planned for tomorrow. It's an hour long, and we're planning on quarterly, so every 3 months. So I'm anticipating the next meeting to be mid-March. And I'm hoping to propose a subcommittee model so that the full group doesn't have to meet based on people's specific, interests, and then kind of organizing a 12-member board meeting can be challenging with various schedules. So I thought some subcommittees could help kind of move along various aspects of the work that needs to be done at their own pace. And in a smaller, 3 to 4 group committee.
That is wonderful. That's a great overview. Thank you for that. So Alex, Liz, Mike are, as a small board, anyone have any interest of being the rep on the Heart of Winooski? We can. Liz, did you say you're interested?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd love to participate.
I am so excited, Liz. Great.
Okay.
I was hoping you were going to say that. I was hoping, keeping my fingers crossed.
I got lots of ideas and lots of questions too, but we can check in on that later.
Exactly.
Great. Our first meeting is tomorrow.
Okay. Send me the info.
So we do need to vote on this so that it is official. So does someone have a nomination?
I nominate Liz.
Do you have a nomination, Alex?
I nominate Liz to be to represent the school board on the Heart of Winooski's Foundations board.
Great. Does anybody have any discussion or any questions about that? Then we're going to move to a vote. Mike.
Aye.
Aye for myself. Alex.
Aye.
Liz.
There you have it.
I don't have to.
You get to vote for yourself. Yeah, exactly. We got you no matter what.
All right.
You're in no matter how you
officially
vote.
The school board rep on the fabulous Heart of Winooski organization. Whoop, whoop. Okay. All right. So our next item on the budget, on the agenda is talking about the Weighting Study Coalition resolution. So what this is the Pupils Weighting Factors Report submitted to the legislature in December 2019 will be a focal point across the upcoming legislative session and could bring significant resources to WSD if adopted in its current form. Board member Alex Yen agreed to represent the board in a meeting with other board reps from across the state to develop a coalition and strategy to advocate for adoption of this report. So what we're looking to do is we're looking for a motion to approve joining the coalition and then having discussions about that. And Alex, once we kind of get in discussion, you can kind of speak to that whole piece. So what I'm looking for is a motion to approve joining this coalition.
I make the motion to join this. I'll defer
Go
to
ahead. No, go ahead. Knock yourself out. Go for it.
I make the motion that Winooski joins this larger coalition to support and advocate for the passing of the student weighting pupil study in the legislation.
Fantastic. We have a motion on the table. So now we move into board discussion. Would Liz and Mike, would you like Alex to give us some more information about that? Or Liz, do you just have a question to start us?
My question is, who else is in the coalition, and are there any school districts that are opposed, or is there any kind of organized opposition, and where does the school board association stand on the?
There is no, so obviously the coalition was looking at people who wanted to support the weighting study.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really, but what's interesting about the weighting study is we know that there's going to be some winners and losers to this, and Winooski's one of the bigger winners of this. But what's interesting about the study, to my thing, is that it's trying to like unite some of the urban with the rural. So it's not leaving out the rural. And so a lot of the other school districts that are going to be involved, like you're going to see Burlington, Rutland, but you're also going to see us trying to like reach out and really work hard with schools in the Northeast Kingdom, the Montpelier area, and even Brattleboro, that area. And I actually had someone reach out to me about, how they appreciated the content that we were talking about and uniting. And so the coalition is really trying to like build this overarching kind of theme of like, how do we present this so that it isn't really necessarily a winners or losers, but it's a benefit for the whole state of Vermont. And I've been trying to aim it at an angle of like, this is important if we want a democracy, right? Everybody should be educated equally to be.
Well said.
And so, so they only had the first meeting to really gauge everybody, like, hey, what's the resolution should we pass with school districts, and how do we build momentum to really push and convince the legislators to pass this funding formula for the state. And just note that like our current funding formula, and this is related to a lot to the equalized pupil count, like, and that has a big impact on what our thing is. That equalized pupil, like if you were to look at it, there was really no research behind what went behind who gets counted and weighted in that certain way. And that if you got through the long document, you can see the different ways of how they weighed in and the considerations that they put into how we should be weighting the pupils. I hope that's a good mini explanation on everything.
So any other further questions?
I think from an advocacy standpoint, I don't think there is anything more important to us that would go through the legislature this year than this piece. It finally acknowledges the fact that it finally acknowledges more clearly and with better background data the cost of educating our children across the entire spectrum. And I think it's a big deal. So Alex, thank you for working with that and through that.
And Alex, is the coalition staffed at all, or is it entirely just volunteer board members? Is there anybody who's like in the State House or virtual State House following it? No.
It actually started out of like basically I think 3 or 4 school board members from Burlington, and then out and doing all the work, a lot of the work, and reaching out and building. I think there's the second meeting's going to happen. I think it's on my calendar next week. Anybody wanting to do it, they're all monitoring, making sure that none of the school boards reach any quorum issues and all that. So there's a lot of careful considerations on that. Definitely important for us. And oddly enough, even though like Burlington was organizing, there are a lot of things, lessons learned that they were learning from what we've already done in Winooski. I mentioned the fact that Philip Baruch came into our school district and had the conversation with us, and we showed the education committee on those things. And just to say, the BSBA, I got to admit, some of the folks there were not the biggest fans of the BSBA, but they're thinking about working with them to a certain degree. And I think part of the reason why they're hesitant with the BSBA is because they haven't developed the strategy, knowing that some will see the weighting study as a winners and losers kind of dynamic narrative.
All right, thank you for the discussion and questions. Do you have something else, Liz?
Oh, I was just gonna suggest Voices for Vermont's Children might be an ally in the State House. That they have capacity and have worked on equity before, so it might be worth.
Cool. That's a good point. So what I think we need to move to is to vote. So I want to read the resolution before we vote on this.
So Tori, hold on one second. So I think you have two separate motions, right? So the first one is to join the coalition, which is already on the table right now.
Right.
So I think you want to vote on that one because you've had the discussion. Then you want to ask for a motion on the resolution. So two separate pieces.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so let's vote on joining the coalition. I'll be asking all those in favor. Let me go around. Mike.
Aye.
Alex.
Aye.
Liz.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. That passes. We are joining the coalition. And the next thing on the table.
Just one more thing, Tori. Alex, as you move forward, if you need help with representation or coverage, let me know.
Thank you.
So the next is a proposed resolution. So can I have a motion to put this on the table? And then I can read it and then we'll vote? Does that make sense? Okay, I'll do that. So the proposed resolution. Therefore, be it resolved, the Winooski School District hereby joins with other Vermont school boards to advocate to the Vermont legislature for the adoption of the recommendations of the Vermont Pupil Weighting Factors Report. I need a motion on the table to accept the proposed. Go ahead.
I was just gonna move to approve the resolution as you read it.
Okay, so it's on the motion. Okay, then I'm gonna go around and get everyone's vote. For all those in favor or opposed, let me know. Mike?
Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
And aye. So the proposed resolution passes. Okay. All right, so next up, we have an approval for a motion for an approval for the support staff contract from July 1st, 2020 to July 30th, 2022. So I will ask for a motion to approve the support staff contract.
I move that we accept the contract for the support staff as presented.
Excellent. Any board discussion on the support staff contract?
So just from a real high level, we have finally gotten the support staff into, I mean, this is a two-year contract.
Congratulations.
Worked to get it offset with the teachers so we could negotiate with one or the other in any given year. Hopefully with the teachers, we can continue that trend. So this is a 2-year deal, gives us a little stability in budgeting for a year. So.
Excellent. Anything else? Anyone? Okay, so we will vote. I will go around again for all those in favor or opposed. Mike, I'm just gonna keep starting with you because y'all are in the squares the way it looks. All right,
That's
Mike.
I figured I was on the top left or the bottom right, one or the other. Yes, aye. Did you say aye? Aye, yes.
Great. Alex?
Aye.
Liz? And me, aye. So the motion passes. We accepted the support staff contract. Congratulations, negotiators and
Sean,
everyone involved.
has the support staff ratified yet?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to executive limitations. There is an action on the agenda to approve capital project change order number 5. I will accept a motion to approve capital project change number 5.
Move to approve capital project change number 5.
Or to put a motion on the table.
Yep.
Excellent. Does
yeah.
anyone have a discussion about this item?
Oh, yeah. And Sean, I guess I'm going to direct these at you or Nicole, because I'm not sure where else. In these items, it just seems to me that 58 and 59 down at the bottom represent pretty much most of the change, but roof drains and rain leader piping to me from a relatively non-technical perspective seem like a very basic component. This is an add to the current project, correct?
Yes.
Are those adds something that were an oversight change from some previous look? I mean, roof drains seem to be something you need, especially on a flat roof. What is the change order all about?
So I cannot tell you specifically if that was a design flaw or if that was a construction need after the design. What I can tell you is that this, based on the budget that you all talked about last month with the value engineering included, these were built into that. So this is not another reduction of the contingency that was already accrued into that budget.
So this is.
So I'm happy to get more information for you on the details about 59, 58, and 59, or whichever numbers you want. I don't have that detail in front of me.
Okay, and then so I don't have any concern as long as these were in that original or the previous value engineering piece. The only other question I would have, if you can help me with, is the very top one, 022, deleting a grease trap. It sounds innocuous, but for $20,000, I guess my question is, are we leaving something behind that this was supposed to replace?
Like a lot of grease somewhere?
Well, I'm assuming that a concrete grease trap is, the concrete is something different and new that had originally been proposed. If we're leaving something that was the old one there, is somebody standing up to tell us that that thing will, that the old one will last another 20 years, as we hope most of this project will, 20 to 30?
Yeah, so again, I don't know the specifics on that. You know, we probably would have talked about this at an executive committee meeting had we had it this afternoon before the board meeting.
Okay.
But I'm happy to get those details for you.
I would, if we can keep those 2 questions on the table and ask them next Wednesday in the executive meeting, I can be had for that as well.
Okay.
That way we can do them all at once.
Okay.
But again,
any other questions about grease traps? Okay. All right.
That
So,
sounds too exciting.
I love that you get into the details, Mike. Yes. All right. So the motion's on the table, and I'm going to go around for a vote. If you agree or oppose. So Mike.
Aye.
Alex.
Aye.
Liz.
Aye.
Aye. A motion passes. We approve the capital project change order number 5. Okay. So now it is time for the FY22 budget work
Hold on.
session.
You got one more thing. You got that adjustment from the beginning of the agenda for the Green Mountain Power Agreement.
Oh, we did put that in the agenda, didn't we? Okay. I don't know if I have where my notes are on that. Will you tee that one up, Sean?
I'm happy to tee that up.
Great.
So we would have gotten this in the packet, but it was under legal review. We got, per the memo that Nicole included it under separate cover to the board, which is now in the public documents on the website. It was reviewed by our counsel, Pietro Lynn, by Nicole, by our owner project manager, and they're all recommending that you approve this. Why it requires your approval is because they're bringing power in from another place, and there's an easement in the agreement. So you have the memo, and then you had the actual, I think, 9-page agreement that was sent out, and we are recommending that you approve that. It's part of the capital project. All of that was budgeted. In fact, the way it looks right now, we're going to come in under budget, $5,000 to $10,000 on that part of the project.
And an easement, if I understand the terminology and what I saw here, is allowing Green Mountain Power to have access to that space if and when they need it?
Correct.
Okay. When you got 100,000 volts running under the ground, you probably want to do that.
All right, can we get a motion on the table?
What are we?
Make the motion to accept the Green Mountain Power Project change order. Is that right?
The Green Mountain Power agreement for the capital project.
I propose to, I make the motion to accept the Green Mountain Project agreement for the capital project. I think I got all the pieces.
I think that works. That's a good motion. Okay, any discussion? Any questions?
Yeah, no, with the comment that this was budgeted, I'm good.
Okay. Then let's vote. All those in favor? All those opposed? I'll start with you, Mike, again.
I got to sit in a different chair. Aye.
I know, it's not going to happen tonight, though.
Nope. Aye.
Alex?
Aye.
Liz?
Aye.
Tori? Aye. Action passes. Motion passes. All right. So can we get to the FY22 budget work session? Yay! All right, we're arrived.
Can't
so I'll
wait.
turn it over to Nicole and Sean. It's all you.
All right.
We have
Thank
absolutely
you.
wiped everybody else out.
I know. I hope our budget buddies stuck around, or but this will be good. All right. Awesome. Thanks. Go.
Doesn't look like it. Okay. All right. I'm going to share screen.
Great.
And I'm going to see if I can make this bigger so it's easier for everyone to see. How is that?
Excellent.
Good. Okay. So this week we're not going to do a lot of looking at the budget that was proposed last week. We did not have much time to sharpen our pencils due to the COVID stuff going on in our district and in our community. We did not receive any new numbers this week that would have impacted changes, positive or negative, across the budget. So what I did want to do, and I want to thank my team for being here last week and doing a fabulous job, from what I've been told by many, of doing that initial overview and presentation of the budget. I know it's a tremendous amount of information, but it is all the background that's important to have as context as you make important decisions to bring a budget forward to the community. So I want to kind of go back just a little bit and do hopefully a fairly brisk look at why we brought a level services budget forward, because we haven't really done that before, at least in my time with WSD. And so I want to start on this slide with talking a little bit about the story of the development and growth of our district over the last 8-9 years. And starting with the investment in staffing. So when I got here in the summer of 2013, there was kind of a massive shift underway already, which was being driven at the top by through governance of the board. Mike and Tori in particular had joined the board. There was kind of a rising from the ashes that was happening after some near labor strikes. and a lot of turnover in leadership and so forth. And so the adoption of policy governance, stability of new board members over time. And then when I arrived, one of my initial assessments very quickly that I brought to the board was that we were vastly under-resourced with the needs of our students and the needs of our staff. So over the last 6 to 8 years, we've made significant investments over time, particularly in high impact student learning areas, such as English language learning and special ed, where we have added 10, 11 staff members over the course of those years. We've added literacy and math supports. Sometimes most of that has been funded through federal grant monies. The other need that we had was helping students to manage their own behaviors and helping our staff to be able to do that and having a tiered system of supports for that. So we developed behavior teams at the middle high school and the elementary, along with doing school-wide pieces around PBIS and school-wide expectations. At the same time, we were doing a bit of a reorganization of the administrative team. 8 years ago, we had one administrator in charge of special ed and ELL, and that's just overwhelming, considering the needs across our district. So we reorganized that so we could have more commitment to both of those group of needs. And in this year, we brought out a full-time curriculum director for the first time. We had a director who had been contracted and was kind of part-time when I first got here. Then we had it split with the ELL job, which became untenable over time. So that's another piece of the puzzle. So we shifted from some of the really high impact day-to-day student and staff needs, supporting classroom teachers with specialists like ELL and special ed teachers. And then we shifted into some of the support areas like IT, where we've gone from basically 1.5 up to 5 members of that team over time, a wellness coordinator. And then we started to build back some of the music, art, and theater positions that had been decreased in the early 2000s through budget cuts. And we started to grow with winter transportation now in our, I think, 4th year. And started to even move into some of the central needs, particularly human resources at the central office, having an HR manager. It used to be the job of the superintendent and my assistant to cover a lot of the HR functions. So that's kind of in a nutshell where the targeted and really intentional work happened in the first 6, 8 years to kind of get us where we were. All along, we knew that the building also had needs. We were growing, and we also knew that our community maybe 6, 7 years ago was not quite ready, that we had to prove ourselves as a board, I felt like myself, my team, we needed to prove ourselves that we were moving the district in the right direction. And so we waited, and then when the time was right, when the building was full and we knew we needed to move forward into the next phase, which was the investment in the capital project that was supported by the community. And we're in the middle of that now, thank goodness. So that's kind of a retrospective just to kind of get you to where we are and why we've made some of the investments that we have over time. Now, so why did we present a level services instead of bringing some opportunities for investment to you? The financial landscape is very uncertain right now. With the federal government, we don't know. While we think that things will move in a positive direction through President-elect Biden's administration, we've already seen signs of that through some stated policy movement around immigration that we're very excited about, which will help us. But we still don't know in terms of stimulus and other funding, whether there will be any relief for states around COVID. We have a significant shortfall in the ed fund, And you've heard the rhetoric already about 9% right off the top increase. And so there's all of that uncertainty. We happen to be in a fairly good financial position because of some favorable years. We have accrued a fund balance. We've been able to figure out some really great financing around the capital project through USDA, which will be some wonderful long-term savings. But we do have the onset of that debt also, which is a large part of the year-to-year increase for the next couple of years. So we're trying to remain somewhat conservative with all of those balls in the air and all of those pieces of uncertainty. And that's why we did not bring a lot of investment. In addition, we don't have any space for anybody. So we as a team, leadership team said, we're not going to ask for additional staffing because we don't have any place to put anybody. And next year, we are going to be moving people around a lot in the building to accommodate the internal renovations that'll be happening in the capital project. So what we really want to focus on and need your support, which you have already voted to do, is to look at the opportunity around the weighting study. That will be a significant opportunity for us to gain some resources, and the timing, if it were to really be implemented in a couple of years out, would fit perfectly for us, because we would be coming out of a finished building, we would have more space, we would have more planning time coming out of a pandemic, and be able to really thoughtfully plan for those that influx of resources. So that in a nutshell is kind of why we came forth with the budget that we did. And I will tell you that the pandemic has provided a stress test of the organization. And I think I'm really proud of all of our people, all of our staff, our students, and our families, and the way that they have dealt with these really challenging circumstances. And I think it speaks to the growth that we have made over the last 8 or 9 years, from policy governance to all of the staff that we have hired and the way that we built teams around them working together, to the resiliency that we're starting to see be built across our students. So before I get to the next slide, I'm happy to entertain any questions on my diatribe. Yeah, Liz.
Will you talk about anti-racism at all in the later slides? Or if I have questions about that, should I bring them up now?
You can bring them up now. What I will tell you before your question is that we do not have money for any anti-racism in the FY22 budget. What has been discussed the past couple of months is using fund balance for that, because it's a good use of one-time dollars. So that's why we did not include any investment in that in the FY22 budget. So that also is a conversation point for the board to have, if they would prefer to fund it in a different way than they've previously discussed.
Just like all of this is amazing progress and like truly remarkable. I would say that I would consider and the anti-racism work as an opportunity as well. You mentioned the resiliency of the staff and the students, and that doesn't come without work and without really responding to the call from folks within your building. And so I also think it is cutting edge, differentiating work that this district can lead on in a way that is going to be beneficial, not just for the work the well-being of the people who are getting educated and doing the educating, but also for others to learn from. So I would add anti-racism work as an opportunity and call for our investment in it.
Great. Yeah, and I think we'll continue to have those conversations along the way. You know, it was set up pretty nicely today by Rainbow and her budget presentation. And with the work that Nicole and I can do is present to the board different ways that you can invest in that work so that you can make some decisions about that. Alex?
Last year there was going to be severe consequences if we didn't pass the budget on the first time. Are there the same concerns, or do we have leeway on that?
Can you talk a little bit about that in terms of consequences, what you're referencing?
The consequences was more due to the capital project being delayed. I think that right, and so I'm curious if we had any. I mean, thank God we passed it then, because it would have been a mess to deal with during COVID, right? So, right. But I'm not worried about the COVID. I'm just kind of worried about what happens if we don't pass. Does it have any negative consequences to the capital project?
Well, it certainly could, because we're we're bringing on the debt. So again, next week, Nicole has been working diligently to come up with a couple recommendations about how you could bring that on over time because of the interim financing with USDA. And we've got that for a few years before we get into the USDA long-term financing. And because we had money built into the current FY21 budget more than we really needed, we have a little more flexibility about how we can do that.
Okay.
So I think there's always a risk in the budget not passing because there's a level of debt in there that needs to be paid.
Right.
I think given those factors, the risk is fairly low for us with the FY22 budget.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let me see if I can move on. I'm not sure if it's going to let me move. Oh, there we go. Okay. So the next piece that I wanted to share with you was, let's see, your history around budget votes. And you have done remarkably well. So you've passed 13 consecutive budgets, and the past 6 have been in the 60 to 70% positive margin range. You can also notice here that there's a range of like 700 to 2,100 voters. The margins, the positive margins tend to be higher with more voter participation.
So just a note on that, you get 300 no votes no matter what you put out for vote. So if you can get 700 people out, you got a pretty good chance of passing a budget.
Right. So I think it also speaks to the desire across the community to invest in the school, because within that has been all that staffing that I talked about, the investment in the capital project. So you have done remarkably well as a board in passing budgets in some challenging times, and there's been a real belief, I think, by the community in the work that the board is leading. Any questions on this one before I go to the next one?
I was just going to say it could be helpful in future slides to add the special election for the bond. That was a closer vote, but
12 votes. Yes, it was close.
yeah, but also a low turnout election. So anyways.
Yeah. Okay.
Which is, again, one of the challenges if you have a off-cycle vote, you're going to get less people out to vote. And I think if you look at those numbers in the May vote for the capital project originally, it probably hovers down in the mid 600s total.
So the next slide is one has a lot of numbers on it. So I just want to give you a little bit of interpretation and some kind of noticings of what's in there. And then Nicole's going to talk a little bit about the relationships between these different factors in the budget. So things to notice is certainly the trajectory of the budget amount, which goes along with the trajectory of the equalized pupils as we have more students and more needs with the weightings that are figured into those. And the community has supported us investing more. We still, when you look across the state, we still tend to be in the bottom quarter to bottom third of spending per pupil. On the expense, the percent change expense, you know, it's a fairly tight band if you take out the outliers of between, you know, 2 and 6%. And then you have a broader disparity when you get to the percent change in tax, anywhere from -5% to a 10% increase. And then you see that the CLA has pretty much continually go down, except for that blip in FY15. So
Can you remind me what CLA stands for? And
common
is?
level of appraisal.
Okay.
And
what
Nicole's
does that
going to
mean?
talk a little bit. This is probably a good segue for Nicole to jump in, and she can talk about that, but she's going to talk more so about like how these factors work together. That, you know, this isn't necessarily a magic machine where things don't make sense. We do plug in all of these different factors, and the legislator sets a tax rate, and then we do have a final number of tax impact. And there's different relationships between these factors. Go ahead, Nicole.
So I think, Mike, you had asked to see this last week, that this is a chart that is shared every year. So we updated it with FY21's figures. And I think if I were gonna dare to add another column to this chart, I would add education spending per equalized pupil and how much that has changed over time. Because our tax rate really, the budgeted amount and the total increase or decrease of expenditures is just one component of the calculation, and the main driver is how much you change in terms of your education spending, which is not your total budget. It's your total budget minus whatever offsetting revenues you have. So special ed revenue that comes from the state, transportation aid that comes from the state, other smaller forms of revenue that come in from the state to offset the amount that you need to receive from the state through the education fund. So once you have the total amount that you receive from the education, that you need from the education fund to pay for your budget, then that gets divided by the number of equalized pupils to get your ed spending per equalized pupil. So I went back and looked over just like the last 5 years. So for example, in FY19, where you see your expenses went up almost 6%, but your percent tax rate dropped almost 1%. Well, that was a combination of a couple of factors. Your education spending per equalized pupil that year went down 1.2% because you had that bump in equalized pupils. At the same time, the CLA didn't drop too much. So I'll talk about the CLA a little bit because that is a really important driver in the formula. So that piece is an attempt to sort of equalize property values across the state. So if the CLA is at 100%, that means that properties in the community are selling at their assessed value. When the CLA starts to drop, that means that properties are selling for more than their assessed or listed value. So, and there's a sort of safeguard built into the formula so that if the CLA goes down to 80%, it triggers an automatic requirement for all properties in the community to be reassessed. So we're headed there. But the lower your CLA, that has the effect of raising your tax rate. Because, well, because that's the way the formula works. And I can certainly provide you with more written materials on the CLA if you have an interest. But education spending per equalized pupil, what's happening with the CLA, and also what's happening at the state level with the education fund are the three main drivers that you really need to be sort of paying attention to as you think about what's likely to happen with the tax rate based on the budget you're looking at. What happens at the state level is more difficult because they usually don't get around to making a decision until June, well after budgets have been decided. And sometimes the letter that comes out in December and predicts what's going to happen with average tax rates is accurate, or it lands about right. And in other times, the legislature identifies surplus funds from the prior year and they decide to apply them in order, you know, if it's an election year or what have you in terms of the political dynamics, that can affect essentially how much $1 of taxation can raise for the ed fund. So it's important to understand the December 1 letter and what those projected tax yields and tax rates mean for the district. It's very rare that things end up worse than that. So in many ways, the December 1 letter is useful in terms of painting the sort of worst case scenario for taxpayers as they're thinking about the tax rate impact. But when you present a budget, you are really operating with a bit of an unknown in terms of that piece of the formula. What you will know is this is our education spending per equalized pupil. We usually get our equalized pupils in mid-December. And what the CLA is, which we also should receive in the next week or so. So you'll know two big pieces and have a good sense of what the worst case scenario might be on the state side.
If I had to put direction at least, I would have to think equalized pupils are going down. And I got to believe the CLA will continue to drop. Is that
so
far out of bounds?
Yes, I just attended a training for new business managers with Brad James earlier this week. And I learned something from Brad that I didn't know about how the equalized pupil calculation works. So it is a function of your, of 2 years rolling average of your ADM. That sort of kicks off the calculation. And because so many school districts were experiencing an increase in homeschooling as a result of the pandemic, the legislature essentially said you will be held harmless on your ADM for the year we're in now. So it won't be any less than it was last year. So we can probably expect that our ADM will be the same as it was last year. But because of the 2-year rolling average, I just want to flag that in FY19, our ADM was about 873. And this past year it was 834. So even though we're being held harmless on ADM, we've lost the higher number from FY19. So you're starting from a lower base. So, you know, it's likely that we will see a drop in our equalized pupil.
Okay, but not for the reasons I would have expected. Thank you for that.
Learn something new every day from Brad James.
There you go.
Yeah. What ADM means again?
Average daily membership. So that is the actual count of physical students in your building in October of every school year. And then they use the physical count of the enrollments to start the calculation of what your equalized pupils would be based on the number of students living in poverty, the number of English learners, high school students versus pre-K, et cetera. That's when the weights come in.
Okay. Thank you.
So are we not doing a reassessment of our CLA? Because we're getting awfully close to the 80% where it has to be legally reassessed, right?
Thought it was 85.
I believe there are plans to start that process in the next year.
I think, God, can't think of her name, city manager, sorry.
Jesse Baker.
Jesse, yeah. I think she told me it was actually at 85, you need to start getting the gears turning quick. So I think that's something that has to come.
Yeah, I know they're planning for it, but I'm not sure what the timeline is, and I would imagine it may have changed a bit with the pandemic.
Right.
Yeah.
Totally. Soon.
Yeah. All right, to move on. So the next slide, Nicole's going to talk to you a little bit about transportation options. And again, these are responses to some of the good questions that you guys had last week. And we've got a few more slides, I think, after this special ed and maybe one other, right? So go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah, so this was really in response to some questions around transportation options. And so I just took the figures that we received from STA this year, looked back over the last 3 or 4 years at what their annual rate of increase was per route and how many kids they could fit on a bus and how many routes we might need to estimate these costs. So these are just estimates. We don't know what might happen with ridership and how many buses you might need or not need. But it sounded to me like there were a couple of different scenarios floating around that I just wanted to put in front of you to sort of concretely what that would look like. So the first one is essentially a continuation of the service that is envisioned to be provided this year. But expand, I think over the past few years, we've been able to do Elm Street and O'Brien Center with 2 buses. This has 3 buses, which could help you think about having a bus that would circulate more broadly through the community. So that's the cost difference. I would say that that's generally just a continuation of what you have provided or we're hoping to provide this year and have budgeted to provide this year. Option B looks at what if you did that year round for just students that lived a certain distance from the school, year round transportation. Option C was assuming all students were eligible to receive transportation. That was another question that came or scenario that was posed. And so if you would provide transportation to everyone in the city just in the wintertime, that's option C. Year round is option D.
Can I ask Sean, you weren't at the last board meeting, maybe you watched the recording or got a report on public comment from community members who are concerned about just being able to get their kids to school on various work schedules. Not everybody works 9 to 5 kind of thing, or safety. I guess I'm just wondering, the parents seem pretty concerned about getting kids to school and about like getting to jobs or getting kids home from school. How have you seen any impacts on students in school, if at all, for those who would be serviced by the bus?
Yeah, so we gathered data the first couple of years on winter transportation, and we actually work with some folks to try and tease out some conclusions from it. It was very difficult because winter transportation is also done during the cold and flu season. So without being able to drill down to the individual student or having the resources to do that, we couldn't necessarily come to any great conclusions about why kids were not attending school on those days. We did talk to our nurses to kind of look at the weeks when we had a lot of kids out, and they could tell us like, yeah, most of that was due to sickness. So the only conclusion that we came to, which was, I would say anecdotal at best, is that it did not have a significant impact on attendance. That does not change our commitment to moving toward this, towards increased service. But that's what we learned.
Liz, just a point for whatever it's worth. When we first started talking about this, I spent several mornings standing on the corner up by the school on good days, on bad days. I went down to walk down to Elm Street a few times. I guess my overall observation was these folks in these areas that I was watching anyway are getting kids to school. In some cases, there may have been 8 or 10 kids in a van that may not necessarily have been the safest, but they packed them all in and got them to school. I think the bus is just a lot more convenient for sure. So I think that was one of the things with regards to attendance is they put a high premium on getting the kids to school. I think the busing is a very much a convenience item, and they are going to do it anyway. But I think it's something we should certainly keep in some fashion.
Yeah, I think I'm just thinking from an equity standpoint, and like the yes, they're getting kids to school. Are like what are they kind of grappling with personally or professionally to have to do that? And would it be acceptable if it were, 8 white kids that had to pack into a van? I think this is just one of those things where there's more that we need to do if members of the community are saying like they're experiencing tremendous hardship to just get the kids to school or get the kids home from school. And how does that affect the kid and their ability to learn and thrive? So, I think it's a handful of parents who are speaking up, but I guess I'm trying to understand a little bit more of the benefit or the impact. So I think one thing that would be helpful to perhaps get some more feedback on, if possible, these numbers are super helpful. Thank you, Nicole. From the liaisons or other community outreach that we do around the budget is how much more valuable would year-round, like the full school year service be versus expanded bus service to the whole city, or maybe it's a half mile instead of 3/4 of a mile in the winter, or just getting a bit more feedback that could inform this decision, because those are not small differences in the budget.
Yeah, your point is well taken, Liz. And I think we've been trying to take on kind of an incremental approach over time, because what we also do is we accrue the ability to get some state aid around transportation, but you have to have it in place. I think it's for 2 to 3 years before you can start accruing that support. So, I mean, I just want to recommit, our desire to move this forward as much as possible. It's a matter of, again, it's a matter of priorities within the budget, and what the board is willing to put forward when we get firmer numbers and can say to you, here's what the spending per equalized pupil, here's what the estimated tax rate looks like. Here's how we've got some options for you about how we can structure the debt service over multiple years, which we'll talk about next week, and give you guys some strategic options and decisions.
Yeah.
But I hear you loud and clear, Liz, and I think that you are not alone in both the board and the administration in wanting to move this forward as much as possible. I mean, I feel terrible that we weren't able to get the drivers this year. I mean, it just.
Is there a way to follow up with the bus company if they're being unresponsive to members of our community?
Yeah, I took that note down. We'll give them a call and see what's going on.
And Sean, last week I think I heard it's what, $5,000 or $6,000 to get a CDL license.
Yeah.
But
I was told by the bus company that they pay for that because they do their training program on site. It's part of their.
Yes, the training, I did inquire, Sean, and I also I heard you say you noted that down, but I already communicated with Tool, so I'll be working with that parent who said that he had applied and following up. But they do pay for the training. It's paid at a minimum wage. And then, there are a few out-of-pocket expenses, but I think it's under $40 out of pocket for the individual. But the training is paid, but it's 6 weeks.
And Mike, we already discussed when we heard that there was 2 community members who were interested, that if it works out between the bus company and them, we will figure out a way to make it happen.
Okay, thank you. I figured you were on that piece. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments on transportation? Alex?
Yes, I have one. I just want to say that I feel like our commitment to having this transportation thing work out, I think we can all recognize, most of us can recognize as parents too, that having your kid get to and from school safely is a huge stress, and you cannot measure that in data. And so while it seems like there's only a handful of parents, I think there's more parents that are struggling with this issue. And I think that this chart shows that we are doing due diligence and being able to figure out what is the cost of this. And then the fact that, Emily, you're following up on, folks to be able to get CDL license that is mutually beneficial in terms of job and all the thought and actions that have been put into this transportation, what began as a pilot and how it's grown over time. And it is so unfortunate that we got to this place to get to and from school decision-making last budget meeting, and we can't find drivers. So I just want to celebrate the commitment and the needs that we are hearing and wanting to address those. And then, also holding the loss of what happened this year, and hopefully we can find some soon. Also wanting to get to a place of we will follow up on this information next week. Is that where we're headed for next steps on this?
What information are you?
Well, just what are we going to do with this information? You know, will we carry this forth next week just to continue having decision making so that the board gets to a place where we're deciding what we want to put forward for
Yeah.
next year's budget?
Yes. Yeah. There's a lot, as you know, there's a lot of moving parts, right?
Yes.
So there's those pieces, the CLA, the equalized pupil count
Yeah.
that we're hoping to get fairly soon, some revenue information. And then we will have these cost estimates around transportation. You know, if you want to talk about the other piece would be the possible funding sources for the anti-racism work and
Right.
then the debt service. So those I think are really the major pieces that we're gonna want to tee up for you guys so that you have a full understanding and can make some good decisions about that.
Okay.
Alex?
Yeah, so the dorky side in me and looking at the data here is there a way that we can kind of GIS where people are living and be more strategic? And I've ridden on the bus and I've always thought it was weird that it only has one stop. And I'm kind of curious is there any way to convince we're basically renting a bus so it does one stop, goes to the school and then goes back to that stop to do a second run. And that has always not been my experience of riding a bus. You know, there's multiple stops, right? And why that strategy of one stop? And then also, like I said, if we are stuck with one stop, maybe it's good to do a GIS. I mean, and if you want, feel free to give me the data and we'll figure out how to if you can to.
Yeah, no, we do that with Safe Routes. We send them our addresses and they plot that for us.
Yeah.
And you know, the density is so high down by Elm Street in the O'Brien Center over to West Canal and then up the hill a little bit there in a couple blocks. I mean, it's like 90-something% of our student population in that corridor, which happens to be some of the furthest points from the school, right?
Right.
So yeah, we do have that data, and the reason we did actually add some stops, just for safety purposes, and we found out through the GIS that we had larger clusters of students that we could serve on the route, but we only have like 2 stops. Originally, it was done out of a cost. You know, it was a savings, and because of the density of students, we could have them all come to one place. We could actually do 2 runs from each one of those places, you know, with a single bus. So we didn't need additional buses.
Right. And I would recommend, if you can put that into the presentation for for our community members to see the routes and the thoughtfulness, because I think in some ways what we're hearing is we need more buses to cover all the areas, and it might be helpful just to see that from a data perspective, you know, from a more visual perspective.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah.
Hey.
Okay.
Just one suggestion, since there may be additional public comment about this same issue, if this agenda item could be moved up in the meeting rather than buried toward the end of our next budget conversation. I mean, maybe Tool will know whether there's going to be many members coming on future calls, but it seems like this is the conversation that they want to hear, and we're getting to the answers of the questions, and yet in public comment we don't address them, and so that just might be a little more responsive to those folks who keep showing up.
Yeah, we'll do the best we can. I think tonight was a little challenging with the anti-racism work, which we've typically put at the front. And when you have students coming to do the facilitation and so forth, we were trying to accommodate them at the front end of the meeting. So I think there was a question about social workers. So Nicole put this slide together for you.
Yep. So the top row, the 19, 20, and 21, those are the actual costs of the contract that we have with the Howard Center for the 2 social workers. And then I estimated what it would be based on prior year's increases. So you can see what the cost per social worker is.
And can Sean or Tori, one of you, speak to whether the trauma-informed specialists that were in the anti-racism budget, would that be work that's kind of similar in kind to the 2 additional social workers that I think it was Robin Hood said would be in their like longer range staffing plan, but it would make a tremendous difference? Are those 2 things kind of aligned in how they would serve anti-racism work and the needs of the community that Robin spoke to?
So I think those things are, those roles are different. And because the social workers through the Howard Center, you know, they focus a lot on cases that are referred and providing youth and family services. And then if they don't have enough out of that referral process, then they can expand services to others. So we're just talking about that group that we could use more social workers to serve. The trauma specialists, and I would say WSA has not necessarily described what their vision of that is. We have had conversations with them that we feel we already have existing staff, particularly in our behavior teams, who've gone through quite a bit of trauma-informed training, but there could always be additional training. So I'm not convinced right now that requires additional staffing for what they're proposing. In the role of trauma specialist, partly because I'm not sure what they mean by that, and partly because I think that we have quite a few people that are in somewhat similar roles and already have trauma-informed training, and I'm sure would be willing to do some additional training.
And the behavior team is fully staffed and able to meet the need of the school right now?
Yes, we've seen dramatic decreases in referrals due to the work of the behavior interventionists with students and families, and through the work of the behavior coach with teachers, and I think also attributable to the school-wide expectations and the PBIS programming that we've had in place. So yes, we are. And we even, I mean, we had to kind of grin and bear it. We made a reduction in a behavior interventionist in the elementary. I'm not sure we know the true impact of that yet because of the pandemic this year and having a different layout of the day with numbers of students and so forth.
Okay.
Okay. Was anything else on the social workers before we move into special ed?
Does this include their benefits too? Or is this strictly salary?
So we contract with them, so we don't hold their benefits. So it includes what we pay them. We pay Howard Center on the contract, which I would assume includes benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
And that's a school year payment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, and I think there was a question about special ed. Go ahead, Nicole.
Yeah. So I think, Mike, you wanted to see 5 years worth of what was budgeted for special education versus what was actually spent. And then Sean suggested we also include what we put in the service plan, which is the sort of initial estimate that we have to file with the state in October of every year, what we believe our costs will be for special education. So you can just see how the interplay between those. We had 3 years where our costs were greater than our budget. And then the last 2 years, we've ended with a favorable. And generally speaking, we're reimbursed for 48% of our special education expenses. It's actually a higher percentage K-12 expenses, and we don't get reimbursed for pre-K, and the pre-K expenses are included in these numbers. So it's, but of those actual expenses, we have been reimbursed 48% of those for the last 5 years.
It's good to see that. Okay.
Yeah, and for those of you that, just a reminder, and Liz, I'm not sure if you're right, but the service plan gets built a year ahead. So you're basing that on what you have in front of you, and then obviously there are changes that happen. So when you see us change from service plan to budget, sometimes we have better information because we may have had a student move in or a student leave. Or a staffing change, whatever, just some changes that would affect. So, or there have been years where we've taken a little bit of risk, where we've said, you know, things change and we're going to take $50,000 out of this budget. And we know that we can pick that up across a $19 million budget if we need to at the end, or we have fund balance to cover that. And then of course you have the actual. So you can see there's a, you know, I mean, $600,000 breadth there. And I will tell you that is with meticulous planning by Robin, Nicole, and others to lay that all out. But there are massive shifts that can happen, particularly for an individual or small group of kids if they happen to require high cost services.
Right. Okay.
So we'll go ahead and finish whatever you got.
Did somebody say something, or was there, I thought there was a yawn out there.
Sorry, I had a very audible yawn. No offense.
Mike, did you have a question?
No, I just, I do, but just finish up here if.
A question about, I don't have anything else on that. I mean, I think just to, I mean, special education expenses are, you know, that's not something you can say, well, we're not going to pay that bill. We're not going to. So these are, you know, entitlements and obligations that the district has, and is often there's enemies at the gates, excuse me. But there's, you know, a function of students coming in, or students' needs increasing or decreasing, or as we've seen in this past year, the current year, difficulty staffing. So while our tuition payments have increased, we've had more vacancies in support staff positions that we're finally got to a point where we've been able to hire them, but you know, we're halfway through the school year. So it's very difficult to predict year to year, and because you have to plan so far in advance.
Right.
There are some, it's a calculus around the level of risk you want to take.
And Nicole, that is exactly where I was trying to go with the question. I didn't even know where else to ask it. My gut tells me that with regards to our previous several years of excess that we've had, this past year, I understand 1.1 million is, you know, partially COVID related with an entire quarter. But with a fund balance that we have, if we, and until we see the equalized pupils, the CLA, the, you know, the projected impact to the tax rate, what I was looking for is a place where we could take some level of risk, knowing that we can cover some shortfalls that would be odd out of the fund balance if it acts as to not cut services, for one, but two, can be covered by that fund balance if it's an odd piece. One of the things I struggle with is not seeing the FMR at the end of 4Q. Where are these positive deltas really coming from? I see the annual report, but I can't fish most of that out. The FMR would tell me that after 4Q. So I'm just wondering if you guys have any ideas, and don't even have to answer now, but as we move forward, if the tax rate is going to go above 10, which it probably will, 12 at 14%, what options do we have to take a little risk up front, knowing we can potentially cover some of that out of that fund balance that we don't want to grow too much more?
So I think that is what we can help to start lay out for you next week.
Okay. Question clear? I mean, is
the capital project debt is a part of that possibility. Special ed is a part of that possibility. Reducing the expense side of the budget, the fund balance, there's a lot, and we want to put that together in a way that will be digestible and really be clear for you to consider.
Because even with a fund balance over $1.5 million, I am very averse to putting one-time monies into a budget that we will have to pay for later, because of the compounding effect that you get with that. So,
right. Well, and Mike, I'll just wet your whistle a little bit with this, right? Is that, as a board, that this money that you have accrued, and I think you are right to continue to accrue that into the fund balance, especially given the financial uncertainty that we're living in right now. But you will want to give it back to the taxpayers at some point, and there's a variety of ways of doing that. Right. One of the best ways might be to give it back through lowering the overall borrowing amount on the capital project when we open up the USDA loan in a couple of years. So instead of borrowing 57.8, we borrow 57 or 56.5 or something, which is going to save us a lot of money in the long term.
Yep, and run the interest.
So that's just kind of one of the options, that Nicole and I are working on that we'll bring forward to you guys.
Okay, good to appreciate the breadth of options for sure.
Yeah.
The good news is I think the district is in really strong financial position to weather the fiscal climate, and think particularly about how to leverage some of the resources and tools you have at your disposal to achieve your goals. So that's a great place to be in amidst all this uncertainty.
Yeah. And I think it speaks volumes, one, to your work, Sean, and to the leadership team's work, and to the principals and the teachers, like really keeping a good handle on our fiscal responsibilities. And the way that you all too this year and years present the budget in a way that allows us all to come along so we can really think clearly about priorities and how to keep moving this district forward. Kind of like the way you walked us through everything that's been going on in the last 7-ish years, right? And how we've made those decisions become a stronger, more resilient system for the students, so that we can do our best by them and the families, and also hold a space for innovation and teaching. And how do you do that well? I mean, there's just so much involved in this budget beyond some of the snoozer things around CM, all that. It just, at the end of it, the fact that you can say we're healthy, we're healthy financially, which gives us options, and it takes care, we're taking care of our community and our students, and it's amazing. I feel like it's rocket science what you have put together, Nicole, and how you continue to educate us along the way too, so that we can think differently. We can think about, well, I love, Mike, that you get down into the nitty gritty of it, because I love that. I can't do that. But it allows us to stay on. So what matters most to our community at this point? At what point are we at to start investing where our community is saying we need it? So it's a celebration. It's a long night, but it is a super celebration of just taking good care of a community through education within our sphere of influence. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just one more comment on that. First of all, thank you.
Thank you.
And secondly, I and my team get as impatient as anybody wanting to do it all at once. And we also have to consider the long-term sustainability of what we're doing. And I think, while I said that the stress test of the organization, we've done really well. We've done well at like keeping things going and taking care of each other. I think communicating well with the community. It also shows, some of the organizational fragility that we have when it comes to trying to bring new programs on and trying to expand things.
Mm-hmm.
We do not have that kind of depth right now. And we do want to build it, but we want to build it right over time so that it can sustain and not break down, 5-7 years from now.
Well said. I think COVID also showed the strength of this, of the system. That was a massive undertaking to reorient to that capacity, to something completely uncertain. And I think that was a test also. And I think Winooski and Winooski schools shine, and also what you're handling right now, needing to make a quick decision to go remote. It's another element of resiliency. Well done, and strength.
Can I just put in a huge, and I maybe should have done this earlier, we need to figure out some way to do this, but the Abby group has been absolutely amazing.
Oh, we should celebrate that.
There was an entire apartment building of Winooski residents displaced over the weekend to private residents or an apartment building down in Winooski Falls Way. They needed, the apartment building owners wanted to provide food. Abby group came in, pulled it off, 400 households received food. That was over the weekend.
What?
And then Monday, I called Nina and said, guess what? We're gonna need 7 days worth of meals for Wednesday morning. And they did it. And then we got word this morning, we actually need 23 more kids need meals. She came in, she ordered food. I mean, absolutely phenomenal dedication. So we need to definitely.
Would be good to brainstorm on what we could do to sort of show them that level of just like gratitude. Yeah. Just to.
Yeah. I'll talk with Sean and others about it.
Okay, let us know how we can pitch in as a board.
Don't say it, Mike.
Okay, all right.
What was he about to say?
I'm not gonna, no, never mind. I'm good. Sorry, it even came to mind and you read it too clearly.
Sorry, along the veins of coming together and taking care of one another, just in the last week, that has been, food is really, really big for people right now. So
yeah.
We'll keep you posted on our ideas.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Alex, I think you wanted to say something.
No, I was just saying that was it the golden apple that we should be thinking about giving them? Because I know that we have lots of golden apples, but I don't know. That's what came to my mind as soon as we talked about this.
That's actually a great, Liz, the golden apple, somebody decided a while ago that we would give away these golden apples because you give an apple to the teacher. So if somebody does something really well or somebody does something over the course of time well, you give them the golden apple. What have we given away? 2? Maybe?
Yeah, I think 2 or 3. And they're nice. They're engraved, they're big, heavy, nice mementos for people.
So that, Alex, that's a great idea. At least for saying, just to let them know that we appreciate it.
Right? Yeah.
So it's above and beyond. We pay them for the service, but it is above and beyond because, yeah, that would be good if we can do something.
All right. As much as we love hanging out with each other, so how are we doing? Are we good for the evening? Teacher, can we check out of school yet?
Just newsletter and where we are.
Yeah,
think
so
that's-
I already texted Alex on that one. I was like, I'm gonna get this out of the way right quick.
So
Alex, you up?
It's me.
Yeah. So Liz, that reminds me that we all rotate writing the new an article in the newsletter in the district news. And Mike, you're next after Alex, and then I'm gonna put you in the rotation, okay?
Me?
Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And we just rotate through.
topics are relatively wide open, but tend to float along certain lines. But
yeah, so
and schedule wise, we're definitely meeting next week.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And the
Yes, we will be back.
And the capital project executive committee is just before next week's budget meeting. Is that right? 5:15. Okay.
And should we meet also on the 23rd, or are we?
No, so we did not have the 23rd on the timetable. We had the 30th if needed.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll have all. Okay.
So you guys can decide next week whether you want to come back on the 30th or wait until the 6th.
Okay.
January.
Excellent. All right, everyone.
Well,
Liz?
Well, my other question is on the conversation about the SRO and the report. I think it was from the superintendent, or maybe it was on the anti-racism work, said that community outreach was happening in December and January, but I haven't seen like a calendar or what that looks like, or much just outside as a community member without kids in the school. I'm interested in helping with that to the degree that it would be helpful. But I don't know how to plug in.
Yeah, so there isn't anything that's plugged in yet. So there was the questionnaire that went out to community over Front Porch Forum. It's been communicated to families through our mass messaging. It's being sent to middle high school students and staff, and we're going to adapt it for some of our younger students. And then in the next week or so, we will be scheduling some community Zooms in December and early January.
Okay.
Is that a place for Liz to jump in to help make that room robust, or any needs there for more elbow grease?
There's probably always need for that at this time. So yeah, let me talk.
Elevating it to Front Porch Forum more frequently, because I've only seen one post about it on Front Porch Forum, and
Yeah, well, it's not even been a week, so we'll get it out there again. But that was the first one.
Yeah, it's on my list to send out tomorrow, and then on Front Porch Forum.
Yeah, I mean, like I as like a board member could be like, make sure you saw that, sign up, or some like following up, so it's not always just one person sending it. I don't know.
Yeah,
happy to do that kind of thing.
That's great. Thanks for offering. All right, I'm going to accept a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
And I'm going around, and hey, the squares have changed. Watch this. Alex.
Aye.
Mike.
I've lost interest. I can't be first. I'm not joking.
I know, right?
Aye. Sorry. Aye.
Liz.
Aye.
Tori. Aye. We are adjourned, people. Thank you so much, Sean and Nicole and Emily, for making this meeting happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Katie Letourneau. Thank you,
Thank you. Yes. Thank you for seeing that down there. Sorry. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, RETN.
Thank you.
There.